I'm going to ask the council please to make the appearances for the record, starting with the union.
Greg Forehand for Coastal Florida PVA, representing the Lieutenant's Bargaining Unit for the City of Port Orange.
Any representatives?
Warren Carmen, Port Orange Police Department Lieutenant and our rep.
And for the municipality?
Good morning. Wayne Hillsby with One North and Blue, representing the city. Also have Ripley Gina Lynn, also representing the city, and now Jones, the city attorney.
All right. Before we met this morning, the parties had stipulated that there were two issues for the special magistrate to resolve today, and those were wages, as I recall, and also pension matters. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So the party who declared the impasse was first, and that will be the union. Is there anything preliminary that we have to take up before we start the hearing in earnest?
I think so. Forehand furnished me a copy of the union's exhibits this morning. I had a chance to glance at them. I don't think I have any objections to the exhibits.
Have you had a chance to review the CD's exhibits?
I have had a chance to review the table of contents, and I don't see anything objectionable.
One other thing I've talked to Mr. Forehand from the city's perspective in an effort to try to give you the information as expeditiously as possible. Our two witnesses will be using PowerPoint presentations, obviously with the ability to any question and cross-examine.
Are there any opening statements anyone wants to do?
I'd like to make one, but I'll wait until.
Essentially, we're here on the two issues: pension, which the city has one pension request for a change that doesn't benefit any of our bargaining unit members, so we're not interested in it. Obviously, they've done that because they've entered into a collective bargaining agreement giving that extra benefit to the rank and file bargaining unit that we don't represent, so it's understandable why they are presenting that. We've got a small ask, if you will, for a medical stipend, which we'll get into. And then when it comes to the wage increase, essentially our position is we're asking for more, and we don't want anybody to look at, well, what percentage increase is it? Essentially our position is the lieutenant's pay is very low compared to the surrounding area, and we're just trying to get them back in the ballpark with the rest of the area.
I'd like to give an opening that might be just a little bit longer, because I think it would benefit you to give you some background as to how these negotiations transpired, what took place in some small measure, not a great deal of detail, and how we got to these two issues. So this involves negotiations for the 2023-24 fiscal year. October 1 of 23 to September 30 of 2024. The city had a 3-year agreement with this lieutenant unit that expired on September 30, 2023. Just by way of background, the city has 4 total bargaining units and another group of employees that are not unionized. The 4 bargaining units are the police officers and sergeants, which are the ranks below the lieutenant. They're represented by a different union. IUPA, the International Union Police Association, I guess is the correct terminology for them. We also in the city have a general employee union that's represented by a union called NAGE. That's the National Association of Government Employees. We also have a firefighters bargaining unit, represented by the International Association of Firefighters. And then we have civil service employees who are not unionized. I tell you that it's important from our perspective because with those other bargaining units, the 3 others, including the 4th, which is this lieutenant's bargaining unit, all of those contracts were up for renegotiation this summer. And you're going to hear some testimony about that. agreement with all of the other bargaining units except for lieutenants. You'll hear some testimony about what we agreed to with these other bargaining units, because I think it's important for purposes of your statutory obligation to consider other employees in the city. The civil service employees received a 5% increase for fiscal year 23-24, and another 5% increase for 24-25. The same goes for those employees that are represented by NAGE, the general employees. The employees represented by IUPA in the police department received an average of 7.85% for fiscal year 23-24. And we agreed with them on a 2-year deal with another 5% for 24-25. And just for background purposes, you'll hear testimony about how we also agreed with the firefighters union. And they received an average of 9.68% for the fiscal year 23-24. And again, another second year of an average of 5.3% for 24-25. I tell you all that because we reached an impasse with the lieutenants, having ultimately offered to them a 9.72% increase for fiscal year 23-24, and an additional 5% increase for fiscal year 24-25, which they rejected and had asked for more. We think that's significant for you to know. And also, you'll hear some testimony about how we reached a tentative agreement with the lieutenant on some other issues that are not an impasse. I think it's important for you to know that the city agreed tentatively to increase the clothing allotment by $250. We agreed to increase the number of the specialty pays and some amounts for those specialty pays, consistent with what we agreed to with IUPA. And we also agreed with some other articles as it relates to the grievance procedure and take-home vehicles and things like that. So we're down to 2 issues. As Mr. Forehand said, that's the wages and the pension. We're going to present to you testimony and evidence and exhibits which will, we believe, show why our proposals on those 2 issues are reasonable and consistent with what you have to consider under Section 447.405, which are the factors to be taken into consideration by you, as you're very well familiar, in making a recommendation. And those factors include the annual income comparison of employees in the same or similar working conditions in the local operating area, and the comparison of employees in the same or similar work with governmental entities of comparable size in the state. So we're going to be focusing on those two things. With regard to the wage issue, we're going to give you evidence which, in our view, is appropriate comparisons with municipalities in contiguous counties, first of all. We're not going to be focusing in on municipalities in other areas of the state, such as South Florida or North Florida. We believe that because of cost of living factors and things of that nature, that can be a bit skewed looking at municipalities either in South Florida or even North Florida. We're focusing in on those that are in contiguous counties, essentially, basically counties that kind of touch our county, which is Volusia County. So you'll be seeing comparators from us from places in municipalities in counties such as Brevard and Lake, Seminole, and Volusia. And in particular, we're going to be focusing in on municipalities that are similarly sized in terms of population, in terms of budgets, in terms of number of employees, both sworn and numbers of lieutenants. We took a look at other municipalities that have lieutenant positions. Some of the municipalities out there do not have a lieutenant position, but we've taken a look at those that have, that we believe are comparators, appropriate comparators. So if you look at all the municipalities in the areas that we've looked at, we're going to show you evidence that we're very high, in fact, just about the fourth highest of some 36 agencies that we serve. And the average salary in those jurisdictions is over $6,000. Ours, with our proposal, is just a little bit north of $98,000. Perhaps, to be particular, $98,940. So we believe those are going to be the appropriate comparative for you to look at. The union, and it's apparent from their exhibits, would like for you to compare Port Orange with Daytona Beach and the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. We believe that that's not appropriate comparative. Neither one of those. We're very much different from both of those entities. In terms of Daytona Beach, they're much higher in terms of population.
I think we're getting into closing argument rather than.
Okay, all right. I'll move on. But you're going to see from our evidence that we believe those two entities are apples and oranges, not even close to what should be the appropriate comparators. So I think when the bottom line is when you hear our evidence, you're going to find that our comparators are appropriate and our position is more reasonable. On the pension issue, Mr. Lynn is going to be giving you a kind of a historical perspective on the pension issue. He's doing that for purposes of giving you an idea of what's transpired in the past with our pension plan. We'll go back to 2011 and we've had some pension issues and made some reforms. And have since, they'll show you how those pension reforms have in fact assisted the plan getting back on its feet. And that we created different tiers for employees depending on when they were actually employed by the city. And he'll give you a kind of a rundown of what our pension proposal has been, what the union's has been, and why theirs is, in our view, unreasonable, and the idea that we have talked about taking some of their proposals and actually getting some actuarial studies to determine what the costs of those are going to be down the road. But he'll give you all of that in terms of how our pension works. So he's also going to give you some comparatives on the pension issue in terms of how our plan stacks up with other entities that we think of. So when you see all that, I think you're going to see that our pension plan proposal is also a more reasonable one.
All right, do you want to start with the case issue?
Certainly.
Okay.
Are we going to place the witness over here?
You can sit where it is. Just
all
raise
right.
your right
You
hand.
can do whatever you like. You can go over there, whatever.
Actually, is there anyone else in the room who's going to be sworn today? Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear affirm that the testimony you're going to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do so swear.
State your full name for the record, sir.
It's Arnold Carmen III.
And you are a lieutenant with Port Orange, and you were the negotiator for this contract, right?
That is correct.
All right. We're going to impasse over two issues, wages and pensions, correct?
Yes.
All right, if you'll turn to our handout, number one, request for wages and pension. The first document, titled CFPBA counteroffer 11/9 of 23. Go ahead and tell us what the year wage won, what our final counteroffer was, and was that exactly what we're asking for from the magistrate today?
That is exactly what we're asking for from the magistrate today. Given the lieutenant's choice, we would go with the flat rate one.
Okay. When you say flat rate model, one says pay scale model, one says flat rate. Explain to the magistrate what the difference is.
Sure. So that was in response to the city kind of gave us a bifurcated offer where we could go either the pay scale model or a flat rate model for all the lieutenants across the board. Four of the five of us do exactly the same job. We are shift commanders, and then one is our professional standards lieutenant. So
So the bargaining unit is 5?
that is correct. There are only 5 of us. So this, again, was in response to the city kind of giving us 2 ways to go with that. I'm not sure that I ever actually made it to council 5% raise, the same as everybody else across the city.
As you sit here now, is your union requesting just a one-year deal or a 2-year deal?
For right now, if we were to get that wages in year 2 to that 108,360, we would accept a 2-year deal.
Okay. One of the huge differences between lieutenants in Port Orange and, say, Daytona Beach is overtime, correct?
Correct.
Does Daytona Beach allow their lieutenants, when they have to work over shift, to be paid overtime?
They do.
How about Port Orange?
We are salaried, so
Okay.
we have to flex off any extra time.
Okay. The rank right underneath the lieutenants here in Port Orange is?
Sergeant?
Okay. Do the sergeants, can they accumulate overtime?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to have this turn to the next page, pension improvements.
Okay.
Okay. Pension, there's 2 issues. One, the city came to us requesting a change. Again, that was a change that would benefit Tier 2 employees, correct?
Correct. There was one benefit offered to us, but basically doesn't apply because 4 of the 5 lieutenants are already over the age that would be required.
Okay. Explain the whole Tier 1 and Tier 2 stuff.
Sure. So, and I'm sure Mr. Lynn will do a better job than I will at this. But in 2010, when we were having some pension issues and economic issues, the city and the union at that time agreed to some pension changes. They were not beneficial to what we will call Tier 1 moving forward, and created a Tier 2 system. What the city and IUPA have agreed to at this point kind of removes most of the differences between the 2 tiers. One of the things was that for their pension final average compensation, they would figure it as 5 of their last 10. They have agreed with IUPA to lower that to 3, their 3 highest. There was also, their only retirement was 48 years old and 10 years of service. The city has agreed with them to let them get out in 20.
I'm going to, long story short, what the city has come to you with is changes that will benefit the Tier 2 guys, but not benefit your lieutenant's bargaining units, correct?
That is correct, with the exception of 1 person. That is correct.
Okay. And aside from that, did the city come back with any other pension benefit that they were offering in exchange?
No, just to study a COLA at 20 years, but with no numbers or anything attached to it. They just offered to do the study. In year 1 of the contract.
What was the ask from the union for the pension? What pension change were we asking?
Initially or at the end?
At the end.
Okay. At the end, all we asked for is that the medical stipend, which for Tier 1 employees wouldn't kick in until 25 years, and for Tier 2 employees, the younger employees, kicks in at 10 years. We asked that that stipend be available at 20 years of service or 48 years of service, and 48 years old and 10 years of service.
All right, what is the stipend? Go ahead and explain all of it. For somebody like me who doesn't understand.
Okay, so there's a base amount you get when you get to 10 years, I believe it's $200. And then for every year.
When you say you get $200, that means once you
Monthly
retire,
in
you get
your
that
pension.
per month. Okay.
Correct. So you get that $200 monthly in your pension. For every year of service after that, they pay like $20 a year, up to a maximum of $600. But that's at 30 years, not assuming you do it multiple. So if we leave it 25, it would be around $500.
Okay, and you're asking just to reduce that from 25 to what?
To 20 years, which would also reduce the cost to the city. And we did ask that it not count against the $95,000 pension cap that the city has, because they should be separate benefits.
Okay. So to make it clear, there's a pension cap saying you guys can't make any more than $95,000 a year in your pension.
Forever.
Correct. Okay. And what you're saying is if they give you this.
What we asked for was the medical stipend at 20, and that it not count against that $95,000 pension cap.
Okay. There was no actual pension study done to show what our ask would cost?
There was not, our original ask was studied, but what we ended at was not.
How far did you go in school?
Graduated from college with a bachelor's degree.
All right, can you do a rough estimate and explain it in your head for what that pension benefit would cost?
Sure, if all 5 of us did 30 years, which we probably won't, but if all 5 of us did 30 years, you're looking at 30 grand total to the cost to the city per year.
Do the math.
Because that's, sure, so that'd be $600 a month times 12, well, let's do it at $500 a month, because that's the way I figured it initially at 25. So $500 a month times 12 months, right? So, what is that? I'm blanking out. Let's do, yeah, let's do 500 a month times 12 months, $6,000, right? Per guy, and 1 girl, times 5 lieutenants, you're talking about a total benefit of $30,000 per year. It would be remiss if I didn't. As of September 8th, the total value of our pension fund was $57,281,000. It was quite a bit higher than that now. But so we're asking for a $30,000 benefit for 5 guys out of a $60 million plan. It's not.
The number that you say is for the total,
That would be total cost per year.
no, I'm saying for
Okay.
the 56 million
Mhm.
figure that you just gave me is for what? What is
That is the total value of the pension plan as of September 8th of last year. It is considerably higher.
All right, I'm going to ask you to go to tab number 2, and that is our internal compression.
Yes.
We've got a copy of the wages article for the rank and file in there first,
That is correct.
okay, to show what they're making. And then I'm going to have you turn to the 5th page, which says effect of lack of longevity pay bonus for lieutenants.
Correct.
Okay, so first, the rank and file, including the sergeants under you, they can all earn overtime, correct?
That is correct.
Do most of them actually earn overtime every year?
Yes, sir, there's a chart here for what the sergeant done last year.
Okay, and that's actually the page before I was talking, so that would be the 4th page of Exhibit 2. It says overtime hours for sergeants in 2022.
That is correct.
Okay, are those all of the sergeants at the Port Orange Police Department that are listed?
Yes.
Okay, and those are the overtime hours they earned in fiscal year 2022, correct?
That is correct. But I do, in fairness to the city, in their new contract, 104 of those hours that's in each of those would be removed because that was contract overtime, that they agreed to go to an 84-hour work.
Okay.
So comparatively, moving forward, they would, if everything else was equal, they would be 104 hours lower.
Which means most of them
Would still
would have
be,
over 100 hours of overtime every year.
yeah, all but 2.
Okay, and then going to the next page, it's titled Effect of Lack of Longevity Pay Bonus for Lieutenants. What is longevity pay at the City of Port Orange Police Department?
Okay. So, in the last contract that the city made with IUPA, IUPA got 5% pay bonus, and they got a longevity pay out for $500 per year of service. They got that in both 2021 and in 2022. The lieutenants did not get any of that money, 0.
So in 2022, how much more money would a sergeant or an officer make in longevity pay that the lieutenants don't get?
Well, it depends on how many years of service. What I can tell you is what the lieutenants would have gotten had they been eligible for that longevity.
Okay, and how much is that?
On average, for just 2022, it would have been $9,300 for a lieutenant.
All right, you've seen the numbers that the city shows, for example, at the very beginning, what the hourly rate is.
Correct.
and they'll sometimes extrapolate out saying, okay, at this pay rate, standard number of hours worked in a year, you get this much money. Did they include the longevity bonus in that dollar amount where they show how much the officers make?
They did not, but that was a 2-year deal. They didn't offer that in this new contract. They've already received these payouts.
Okay.
Sergeants did not get.
Sergeants did, lieutenants did not.
Yep, so the only rank below management that didn't get the longevity pay was the lieutenant.
That is correct.
Okay. You've seen documents where the city is pointing out, saying, hey, look at how much money we settled to agree on a contract with NAGE and IAFF and IUPA. And they're showing, for example, that IUPA, which is the rank and file, the officers and the sergeants, that the average increase was 7.85%. Do you know if that 7.85% includes the longevity bonus?
It does not.
Okay. Below, back to our page there, below that first chart that shows how much in longevity pay lieutenants didn't get, it says effect of loss of $1.95 MOU for lieutenants. What MOU are you talking about?
About a year ago now, the city and IUPA, again the rank and file, entered into an agreement where they got a $1.95 raise across the board. We were actually actively negotiating. I went to the table and asked if they would match that for the lieutenants, and got a negative response.
Okay. Do you know if it says IUPA ratified contract average increase of 7.85%? Does that include the $1.95?
It does not. That is disingenuous at best.
Okay,
At
so
7.85.
the 7.85 doesn't include the longevity pay, it doesn't include the $1.95 an hour MOU that they signed separately from the regular negotiations with the rank and file.
That is correct. That was asked and answered at the table.
Okay. The next page is a bunch of W-2s, correct? These are for sergeants here at the city of Port Orange?
That is correct.
Which 3 sergeants did you pick?
Sergeant Fleming, who is the patrol sergeant, Sergeant Maggie, who is now retired, but was a detective sergeant, and Sergeant Fields, who was a detective.
Okay, read those, the total amount of wages, and that's for fiscal year 2022, correct?
Correct.
Okay, how much, I don't want you to tell me the name or
Right.
the dollar amount, but for those 3, what was their?
So Sergeant Fleming is actually a fairly junior sergeant. He made, we'll use box 5, $93,357. I wasn't supposed to connect his name. The next one, I apologize for that. The next one made $104,279, and the third made $100,351. And it's important to remember that what we just got offered from the city was $98,000.
So there are sergeants, because they're entitled to longevity bonus, the MOU of $1.95, and overtime, that are making more than their supervisory and lieutenants.
Absolutely.
What's compression?
Compression is when the wages of employees become too close together. There's no separation between ranks or however you want to break up your employees.
Older employees are stuck at a lower level than newer employees.
Is
Older
there,
and more senior, right?
Generally both.
is there any incentive for a sergeant to take a promotion to lieutenant financially?
Oh, absolutely not. No.
All right, let's get on to exhibit number 3. The first sheet says lieutenant wage comparisons, and it lists several other jurisdictions, including Daytona Beach, Ormond, Volusia. Who compiled that document?
This we received from the city at our second to last meeting.
Okay, and that was for wages in 2022?
Correct.
Did they ever provide us what the increases were in any of these agencies in 2023?
They did not.
Okay. Any of them show what increases coming in 2024 for any of them?
No, sir. all of the lieutenants' hours based in which they did their calculations. It's 2,080 hours a year. We're ours lieutenants work 2,184 hours a year. So there are, when they do the computations, they're using 104 hours that either the city doesn't want to pay us or it's just
So these are other agencies that are salaried, they're salaried, but they're working way fewer hours.
correct, 104 per year less.
Okay, and the hourly lieutenants from all these other agencies, they are entitled to overtime, correct?
The hourly ones, yes.
Okay, how often do you work as a lieutenant, a shift, commanding lieutenant? How often do you work outside your normally scheduled hours?
Fairly often. That kind of depends on what your assignments are. But like for me, we've been doing this. I'm also on the pension board, and we have command staff meetings and the like. We're busy quite often, and then if we have to do public appearances.
Is it inconvenient for you to have to flex out your schedule?
Sure. Yeah. It's less inconvenient flexing it out than what you have to do to earn those flex hours, but yes. We are away from our squad.
Lieutenants are in a position where they would rather get paid for the overtime and be able to do more.
Well, that was brought up at the table, and they would like to stay south. Just being straight up honest, the lieutenants would like to stay south. They'd like to be compensated for what they do.
Okay. Turn to the next page, it says Daytona Beach PD. Okay. That shows annual income for Daytona Beach PD lieutenants, correct?
That is, yeah, it shows their current hourly rate. This is, I got this as a result of the public record prior to April 2nd of 2023, which is a big deal because they got a raise on that.
Okay, what did they get a raise?
They got a 4% raise on April 2nd of 2023. So all these numbers, the 22 grosses, are before that raise. And they are going to get another 3% raise October 1st of this year.
So Daytona actually breaks it down, they don't give one raise a year, they break it down into two separate raises a year, correct?
At least in this case, yes. I don't know if that's their practice.
Okay, did any of the lieutenants in Daytona Beach make less than $100,000?
Not.
You've heard opposing counsel say, we don't think Daytona Beach is an appropriate comparator. Are they bordering you, City of Port Orange?
Yes. We got it multiple ways.
Okay, is it, in your mind, is it a fair comparator?
Yes.
Why is that?
It's in the county. Population used to be about equal. I know council said that theirs is much greater than ours. I have not seen recent numbers, but their population used to be about the same as Port Orange. They do have a much bigger police department. Many more people. They manage to fund it and pay their guys fairly well with a lower average income. So it's kind of falls on deaf ears, the city saying they can.
Okay. Turn to the next page.
Sure.
It says VCSO compensation worksheet.
Mm-hmm.
VCSO is the Volusia County Sheriff's Office, right?
I should have properly titled it the Volusia Sheriff's
It's all right,
Office. They
because-
just account.
Yeah, magistrate from Miami. So
Right.
Port Orange and Daytona Beach are both in Volusia County.
That is correct.
Okay. Go over that document. It says starting base salary $90,000.
Yes, the base salary, I got pursuant to a public record request was $90,000. Per their chief deputy, who I spelled brain, but his name is Brian Henderson, additionally they get a watch commander stipend. Almost all of the lieutenants in our agency, Daytona, and the county are watch commanders. That is our primary job.
Okay. And
So, go ahead.
so that watch command stipend of $4,500, that would be in addition to the base salary.
That is correct. So that would move them to 94.5.
Okay.
If we talk total compensation, which is what we need to do when we're doing the comparison, the county of Volusia pays for full family health insurance for their employees at the sheriff's office. Port Orange contributes 0% to family independent coverage for our officers or for any of our employees in the city. I did the 3 rates to be as advantageous to the city as I could and figured the average. And the average of the 3 rate plans is $319 per paycheck. So that leads to an average annual cost, or in this case, an average annual benefit to the sheriff's office lieutenants of $7,662.32. So if we do that again, that's if we just took an average of the 3 plans. Here in Port Orange, I would need HR to testify to this only, but most people take the T10 or the T38, and that T96 is the highly reputable plan. So anyway, if you do it in Port Orange numbers, including the family health care coverage for the county, it would average on their starting lieutenants at 102, 162.
Okay.
Say that number again.
102, 162.
Does that number factor in pension contributions to the different agencies?
It does not, and again, it's 2 years old now, it's 2022. The VSO members contribute 3% to their pension, which is what they do for the state. All the current POPD lieutenants pay in 7.5%. If a tier 2 guy was to get promoted to lieutenant, he would pay 8% into his pension. So that leaves them with an additional take-home income of $4,597.29. So if you did a total compensation package comparison in Port Orange numbers, the starting lieutenant at VSO would have a comparable salary of $106,759.29.
Turn to the next page, again, we see some W-2s.
Yes.
What are these W-2s of, and why did you provide them?
Well, we'll go back to that first page that we had in this section, that the comparisons that we were provided by the city. You'll see that the city of DeLand, I've already given you the Daytona numbers.
Right.
The city of DeLand lieutenants are also hourly. And the numbers that they're presenting on this are, I don't know where they got it, but they're way too low. And so what I included was every city of DeLand. There are 4 of the city of DeLand lieutenants promoted after April of 2022. So they have 4 basically brand new lieutenants. 5. 1, 2, 3, no, 4 brand new lieutenants. So I'm not even sure if these W-2s that I got from the city of DeLand and the public records list even apply to these guys, but those are the numbers that they actually made. And so we're clear again, I'll use box 5, 97,913, 98,950, 81,352, 97,737, 94,701, 77,097, and 99,568. Those are what the lieutenants in DeLand actually brought home versus the ridiculously low numbers that the city annualized on that comparison that they provided to us. Importantly, because as I heard in the opening statement, they want to compare the outside counties now. That was never done during our negotiations. This was provided by the city. These are the comparatives they provided us.
You're saying there's 2022 W-2s staying in the city?
They came from the city of DeLand. What I'm saying is,
Hey, hold on. The very first page of our exhibit,
Right.
was
that
provided.
was provided by the city, and those are the agencies that the city said are good comparators.
And
What
now
I'm
it's
asking is
apparently,
what are these 2022?
We
I did a
did obtain
public
those.
records request.
Okay. That's scary.
Yes, they
They
can.
can get everything, yes, man, except your address. They didn't get your name.
Okay, is there anything else you think is relevant reference to comparators to
Well, I'm interested to see what the city presents, because they never presented us anything outside the city that negotiations.
Outside the county.
Yeah, outside the county, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So that'll be interesting.
All right, turn to the last exhibit. We don't have to delve into it, but again, briefly outline the position of the pension and what our ask is for and briefly what it costs.
And go slow, please, slow. We're not in a race today, and I'm dealing with numbers. I'm an English major, so numbers are not like my first thing, so just slow down a little bit when you testify. Thank you.
I apologize.
It's okay.
So the overall funded percentage of the plan, again, this is as of September 8th, 2023. I don't want to bring new information to the table. This is what was provided. At that point, the plan was 88.18% funded. It had earned a return in 2023 net of fees of 15.63%. We ranked in the top 5% in performance of all plans to which it was compared, which is about 800 over the last 5 years. We outperformed the median plan by more than $3 million in that span. So we're that $3 million above average. And this year, 2023, our state premium tax money received was $583,716. Remember, we're asking for a $30,000 benefit. The year-over-year cost of the pension dropped, or forecasted, this is here. It cost $2.8 million in 2023, and it is designed to drop to, actuarially estimated to drop to $2.3 million. So a $500,000 savings there. The amortization of our unfunded liability. Are you familiar with that now?
Refresh my recollection.
All right, so unfunded liability is if everything got called to the table right now, we had to pay it out immediately. Every dime that the pension plan owed, we would be short whatever the unfunded liability is. I don't have that total. What I can tell you is that in 2024, the loan payments that we're paying on that unfunded liability, $231,483 fall off in 2024, and an additional $133,722 fall off in 2025.
So the liability
Is absolutely decreasing based on the performance of the plan and the investment of the city. So I'm not going to get into the studies because we're not asking for anything that was studied at this point. It's really not realistic, other than if we had gotten everything that they studied, the total cost of those is $366,383. Would have given both rank and file and the lieutenants everything they asked for. And as you can see, we got a check for more than that, the funding more than that, amortization is falling off more than that, and the year-to-year costs are falling off more than that. And they're all additive.
Long story short, the pension's in healthy condition.
It's very healthy condition and can afford the changes we're asking for, without question.
Finally, one of the reasons we're asking for this today was, did you understand that we were going to get this?
Well, that we were going to get what?
The pension change we asked for.
No, there's some contention on the city side, but I do have it on video, where the city's negotiator offered to give us the pension, the medical stipend at 20 years without a study at the table. When I asked about it at the next meeting, they refused to even say that it was offered, but I do have that.
How long have you been on the pension board?
I think 2017, so 6 years.
The really legal mind I am, is there anything I forgot?
I'm certain we both forgot about it, but we'll leave it at that for now.
I tender the witness.
And James, we can take a quick bathroom
We
break.
can, yes, absolutely. In fact, if anyone needs a break at any time, just let me know if it's needed, starting from. So, let's stand and recess, we can do. I figure out which clock is right.
Yeah, that's incorrect.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's okay.
so, let's stand and recess
For purposes of technology challenge, I'm gonna leave that running unless anybody has an objection to it. That way you guys will be able to download one and there's no chance I get screwed up.
Anybody care if the live stream stays on?
No, I'm good. I just don't want that Jones tripping here.
So, yeah, should we like?
Well, if you're gonna trip, wait for the softball.
No.
We started getting low.
Yeah.
You're moving.
That one too. I brought it with me. I've been through it all.
Yeah, you gotta stay for it. I'm James.
Nice to meet you, James. Thank you for helping me. Leslie. Yeah. I forgot to tell everyone to turn off their phones and silence them, but they
Actually, yeah, the, or,
Mine rang, I only did cut off the recording, it did, did it?
nah, okay, it just popped up on the screen.
It is, the phone is on silent, so it must, I don't know why it rang through.
So, but yeah, the call popped up. Yeah, we'll turn the volume on. Yeah, it's all the way down, you see it, right? That's probably gonna be the audio. Oh, because the audio's gotta be on for the, what did I just do? So if you, it's still running, right? Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Did you actually turn the ringer off there?
I thought I did.
I saw it very much.
I just don't know.
You can put it on Do Not Disturb.
Extra one right over there. I don't know if that's for the court, but, it is, but we can. Yeah, just a little one would be good. Thank you.
All right. I put it on Do Not Disturb, so.
Perfect. Hopefully that'll work. Sorry about the ring, folks.
Rotary engine.
My head right there. Wait a minute. You got me with the math for just a second, took me a minute.
Even foreign languages, I saw that. Math app or
The hardest part of the job. Those are the hardest classes for me. As an engineer, making my first year, breathe through that. But that foreign language is not my thing. I had no.
My son did an engineering degree from you have to get a language. So last week they Spanish he's like halfway through college, we go on a little cruise and doing taxis, going to the Mayan ruins in Mexico, and I'm like, I think I'm gonna find out if I'm getting my money's worth and what I'm paying for. So I said to my son, there's a funny tall building in the distance. I said, Pat, ask the taxi cab driver what that building is in the distance. And he goes, hey, what's that building in the distance?
The Cancun many years ago, ruined the Tulum and Shell Hop. There's a picture of me. My girlfriend had me saved to take a picture, but I drove before I saw my there's an archway like leading up to the temple steps or whatever. And like I walked through and I had to duck. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm taller than the average Mayan, right? So I just filled the whole thing.
Were they climbing the poles when you were there?
Yeah. Oh, I see that.
Well, I went to some, they have these huge, they're just like telephone poles standing up, of course, there's cars and all that. No safety ropes, no nothing. They're climbing these things, doing backflips around, doing crazy. Really cool. Tulum is that's a really cool place. Beautiful beach, did you swim when you were there?
Yeah, we went to a lagoon, a natural lagoon there. They had it netted off from the ocean, but they had their own wildlife in the waters or whatever. This is you could snorkel in there.
Right there in that eco-friendly resort.
Yep.
Yeah.
Echo Palace. This is a ways away. They had dolphins there too. And then they so they wouldn't let you get in with regular sunblock. They had a natural sunblock that you could buy for like $30 for a little bottle. And and I understood because of all the chemicals and all the sunlight, they didn't want it polluting the water. So all the wildlife there and
Plus they make $30.
Yeah, it was wildly overpriced. Yeah. I don't even know if one of those bottles would have covered me. So I was like, I'm okay, whatever.
As pale as you are.
I'm pale by choice now. Now I've really got that skin hard, fair skin and brown. I definitely got it. I do tan, after the initial burn. If I pace myself, I'll tan it. If you say the word sun, I will turn it or straight tan.
Trust me, it is.
I was snorkeling in that lagoon for 2 hours, just having a ball. And the day before we left, I really don't fit in airplanes. I literally had to sit forward on the seat as much as I could. I couldn't touch, my back, whole back. Cooked. That was one of the most miserable experiences of my life. And I'm like, I'm going to put all sunblock on from this day forward for the rest of my life. Never experienced that again. Here's $1,000. I will pay whatever is going to cost you for your natural sunblock this week.
Everything but plates.
I don't blame you.
Outside of that, I've been to Montreal, and that's the extent of my world travels. Really? Yep.
You didn't drive up this morning, did you?
I surely did not. I drove up yesterday, and the minute I got out of South Florida, it was just so wonderful. There was no traffic, no accidents, everything was just The best part was there were wobblers up here as opposed to down
Why
here.
is everybody so fascinated with
You
wobblers?
know what?
This
I
is a
don't know
business,
why. I
city,
don't
we're
know.
a business matter.
You know,
But we
they,
don't have so many of them in South
do
Florida.
you have any Buc-ee's down there yet?
We don't have buses.
Oh my God, have you been to the Buc-ee's
I
yet?
have not been like the buses.
You gotta go to a Buc-ee's, just to see it one time.
It is an experience.
Yeah,
I've only been once, and that was my brother came down from Maryland to visit a few months ago. And I was like, I've been meaning to go. He said, we have to go because he's a big beef jerky fan. They've got all the beef jerky. And it's like, not, prepackaged, whatever.
Oh, like.
But I mean, they've got
This is brand new.
homemade fudge and then their beef brisket. It's amazing. It's crazy. And then the sheer volume of gas pumps they've got. It's insane. And they're huge.
What I found was
Well, I can't wait to store this in the laundry room for,
because I don't have
Next
more
time we
years
want for
in
dinner,
South Florida,
it's heart-shaped
but I
steaks.
stopped off at a and the gas was 20 cents cheaper than the one here. Why?
I want to know who's getting up early enough to use that thing.
It's hard to be, the closer to the highway it is, the more they charge.
I guess, maybe.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's what it is. You gotta, when you're traveling, don't go to the one right up the highway. Go
Yeah, that's what I kind of figured.
Go a few miles in.
Yeah, and then we don't have culverts down in South Florida either, so that was kind of. Hey, I'm. It was great.
I love it.
I didn't even know that. So I'm happy with the story, man. This is great. I did the Wawa and culverts.
I was happy when Wawa came down in the Metro DC area. And we had it there.
Right.
It's not the best subs. Public subs are definitely better. But for a quick little stop or whatever, the Wawa subs are pretty good.
Okay.
Oh, you gotta be closer to me.
talk to him. I just want the big guy here to be able to reach out and grab it if he needs to.
Well, he's got it done.
Actually, he'll have it now.
We're back on the record, and I do want to remind everyone that the recording is going, even though we're not on the record, so keep it clean.
Good reminder.
All right, cross-examination.
So I just have a few questions about the way that you use a couple questions about detention. Sure. Let me just ask you, you testified about how the officers in the Ayuba bargaining unit had received a $1.95 across the board increase. You said back in April of 2022.
I didn't say a date, but it's about a year ago. I don't know the exact date.
Okay. And you're aware, are you not, of the circumstances under which that $1.95 increase was given to the officers?
That we are low staffed?
Well,
Or
isn't
what?
it,
I don't know where you go.
okay, well, isn't it true that at the time, the police department was down 15 different officers, 15 vacancies?
Yes.
And they had to, in order to attract applicants to fill those vacancies, as well as retention, they felt like they needed to increase starting pay as well as pay across the board for those officers. And that's why the $1.95 was.
The reasons aren't really relevant to this hearing. The fact is, they got a $1.95 raise across the board from the senior most sergeant to the junior most officer.
Well, I beg to differ with you. I think it is relevant in terms of the reasoning why the $1.95 was given. We don't dispute the fact that the $1.95 was given in response to a crisis in the department in terms of vacancies being 15 down and having to attract increases of pay, in fact, more officers. You wouldn't dispute that?
No, don't dispute that at all.
All right. And there wasn't any kind of turnover at that time in the lieutenant's position, correct?
Correct, because your lieutenants are the most vested in a private pension plan where they can't leave. The lieutenants are trapped. The city's aware of this.
So there wasn't that kind of turnover in the lieutenant's position,
No,
correct?
Correct.
So that was the reason for the $1.95 increase. You don't dispute that?
Don't have any idea what the reason was, but I won't dispute it.
All right. The longevity, you testified that there's a longevity payment that's made to the officers and the other units?
There was in 2021 and 2022, that is correct.
All right, that was a one-time longevity bonus,
It was a
correct?
two-time longevity bonus.
Okay, it's not a recurring.
Paid only, well, yes, it recurred one time, right? It occurred in 2021 and then recurred in 2022. The argument that we're making is that on average, it's an $18,000 loss for the lieutenants to the rank and file,
Here's my question.
which causes the compression in wages.
My question is, it's not a recurring longevity bonus in the sense that it's built into the contract and they get a longevity bonus every year.
No,
Correct? Okay.
no, and that was never
Right.
what I said.
And you're aware, are you not, that that longevity bonus was done in fiscal year 22 and not part of the current collective bargaining agreements?
It is not part of the current collective bargaining agreement. You're absolutely right.
You're also aware, I presume, that those longevity dollars were given on that basis through monies that were allocated by the federal government as opposed to in response to the COVID crisis. You know that, right?
Right, instead of paying our guys COVID pay, they gave them that, correct?
And those dollars were given to other employees in the city who were first responders, including fire department employees.
I have no idea.
You wouldn't dispute it if I told you what.
Would not, because I can't.
When you-
So just so I'm clear, we gave it to firefighters, rank and file, but not lieutenants. Just so I'm clear, that's what the argument you're making.
I'm just trying to get the record straight in terms of whether you know what those dollars.
Okay, are you trying to put on the record the other officers and the firemen, but lieutenants did not?
What I'm asking you is whether whether you know whether those longevity dollars that were back in fiscal year 22 were allocated based on dollars that the city received from the federal government as a result of COVID. I think the answer is what.
Yeah, I believe they were.
So the W-2, let's turn to that for a minute. You had some W-2 documents in there from the city of Elaine, and also from our employees.
Yes, sir.
You would agree with me that those W-2s do not simply represent base pay that employees earn, correct?
Absolutely.
In fact, those W-2s vary quite a bit from employee to employee because those W-2s include other kinds of pay that they receive, correct?
Correct.
And that could be anything from overtime, depending upon how much overtime that they work, incentives, off-duty pay if they work off-duty, special events, could be a whole assortment of things.
Absolutely.
So those W-2s don't represent just base pay, they represent a lot of other factors.
They do not represent base pay, that is correct.
Now, you mentioned that in the course of negotiations, the lieutenant's bargaining unit and your representatives indicated that there were others, such as Daytona Beach, that earned overtime pay, lieutenants that earned overtime pay.
They do.
And the city, did they not offer to convert you all as lieutenants from salary to overtime?
But yes, but they wanted to lower our hourly rate.
But we offered to convert and allow you to
You
work
did
overtime.
offer to convert and lower your offer, yes, sir, you did.
And work overtime.
Yes,
And you rejected that.
yes,
You said you liked the flex time, you didn't want to go to an overtime system.
yes. It's a majority, and yes.
Just wanted the record to be clear on.
I thought I was.
Daytona Beach, you indicated in your testimony that you think that they are a fair comparator. You're aware that the population of Daytona Beach is much higher than Fort Orange, are you not?
Again, last I checked, the census was pretty close, but it's a long time ago.
If I were to tell you that the most recent census showed that the population of Daytona Beach is around 78,000 and Fort Orange is around 65,000, would you have the reason to receive that?
I would not.
And you would agree with me that in the city of Daytona Beach, they have a much higher number of sworn officers. Would you agree with me on that?
I absolutely would.
Yeah. In fact, they have about 240 147 versus 84 in Fort Wayne. Any reason to dispute that?
No.
And 87, 84 sworn. You'll get testimony from us. 247. And they, in fact, have a much higher number of lieutenants.
That would coincide with higher number of people, yes.
Any familiarity with their budget in terms of how their budget numbers look in comparison to Florida?
None whatsoever.
You wouldn't disagree with me that their budget is likely much higher than Florida's.
By definition, yes, sir.
Let's talk about Volusia, the sheriff's office. That's a law enforcement agency that's countywide, correct?
It is.
So it serves, the deputies there serve the entire population of Volusia County.
Yes, sir.
And you would agree with me that the population of Volusia County is substantially higher than that of Fort Wayne. And you would agree with me that Volusia County, their sheriff's office, that derives their revenues from the county commission, their budget is much higher than 13.
I do.
And in terms of the number of sworn, they call them deputies, we call them officers, but in terms of their sworn officers at the Volusia County Sheriff's Office, they have far more than we do at Fort Wayne.
Yes.
In fact, they have about 404 sworn officers, and we have 80. Does that sound about right?
I have no way to dispute. So, yes.
You all didn't present any comparative evidence with other municipalities with similar populations, budgets, and things of that nature.
I would disagree. I think Daytona is a similar population. You're talking about 13,000 people.
I'll rephrase my question. Other than Daytona Beach,
Mm-hmm.
Volusia is a county, so it's not a municipality, but other than Daytona Beach, you did not present any other comparative evidence for municipalities anywhere, in the state or even in the contiguous counties.
We did not. I responded to what the city offered us, which was in-county comparatives.
But is it your testimony that those municipalities with similar sized populations, budgets, and number of employees are irrelevant?
I haven't given any testimony on that at all.
I think about them. So if that's all the questions I have on the wage issue, Mr. Lynn has a couple of questions for me. Step back.
So you can see, I believe you testified that you will also serve on the police pension board.
That is correct.
And how is that board made up?
There are 2 members, one chosen by council, 1 citizen member, 2 elected officer members, and 1 fifth member.
And who's the fifth member?
I am.
So basically, the pension board is 4 police officers?
No, sir. 2 police officers,
Right,
1 county councilman, and 1 who was picked by the jury.
okay.
So those 4 get together and elect the fifth.
How many police officers are sitting on the pension?
3.
And you're the chairman of the board?
I am.
So you have some familiarity with the state laws that govern how police
Some,
pension
yes,
plans
sir.
operate? And you're familiar with the state law that says you have to have an actuarial study before any change in benefits can be agreed to.
Yes, sir. And in fact, I asked for one at the table when we agreed to that benefit.
But
But he said he didn't. But yes, but
no actuarial study has been done on the 2 specific benefit proposals that PBA wants to be implemented in PBA.
Can I interrupt for a minute? 2 proposals?
it is 1 one would be getting it at 20, and the other would be at 9, and it would be at 95. I'm assuming that's
Two different components.
right, two different components.
I think you're gonna need to speak up too, because the mic is up here, so when you're making comments, when you guess, it's not in time. So please keep your voices up.
We didn't not ask for immediate implementation. We didn't ask for that. We tried to bargain at the table, and then I can understand, right, before we make any pension changes, that it needs to go out and be costed by an actuary. But it's no different than if the council wanted to make changes, they would make their changes and then cost them out to the actuary, right?
But that hasn't been done.
It has not been done, you are correct.
And you're also familiar with Chapter 185, the law that governs police pension plans specifically.
Yes, sir, not as familiar as you, obviously, but yes.
And Chapter 185 says you have to have a uniform system of benefits. Right. In the plan. And
Continue, I'm not
Okay,
sure that I
well,
agree with that, because clearly we have
you
tier
can't
1 and tier
have-
2.
The city could not agree
185 compliant.
to different pension benefits just for lieutenants, right?
Well, that's the argument that the city made to me when I didn't agree to sign off on the benefits that they negotiated with IUPA. That's the exact argument they made to me, that they would cut it out.
So here we are.
Right.
But my point is that the two different proposals, the two pension proposals that PBA has made, in addition to the IUPA, the things that have been agreed to with IUPA, those two changes, the only way they could be implemented is for all the plan members, right?
Again, we made that offer based on the city's argument that they could do what they were going to do with IUPA and cut the lieutenants out. So it was the city's argument that it could be bifurcated. That they could be,
Lieutenants out?
yeah, absolutely. That was the argument made. I will play the videos for you if you like, by the city attorney. That I had no leverage, that they could do what they wanted with the plan because eventually they would impose. That's the argument. I will be happy to play it for you.
Okay. So, but when you did your cost analysis of the excluding the medical stipend from the $95,000 cap on benefits, and you came up with $30,000
Per year
per year
for the 5 lieutenants.
for the 5 lieutenants.
Yes, sir.
Now, how many total members are in the pension plan?
Right now it's around 120. I don't know the exact number.
So, so you did the cost for 5 members, but if the city were to agree to the proposal, it would apply to all 120, right?
That's your argument. I'm telling you that the argument
Wait.
you,
Wait,
wait,
stop. You're not arguing with the
Okay.
attorney on the other side.
Okay.
Let me finish the question and you can
Sure.
respond. And then your attorney can read the rest of your speech.
So the law says that you can't have different benefits based on rank. Right?
That's the way I understood it prior to these negotiations.
All right.
Yes, sir.
So if the city were to agree to your proposals, they would have to be implemented not just for the 5 lieutenants, but for all of the plan members, right?
That is not correct. It would only apply to tier 1 members, because tier 2 has a different medical stipend benefit. So it would only apply to active tier 1 members.
Tell me what tier 1 members are.
Sure. Tier 1 members are employees that were hired prior to January of 2011.
And how many tier 1 members are there?
Around 20. I don't have the exact number.
So not 5, but 20.
Tier 2 members are the ones that were hired after 2011?
That is correct. Sir, I can't tell you that. I can't. I can tell you what
total cost of these benefits.
Absolutely not. For the record, there hasn't been a correct study done on the things they agreed to with IUPA.
Okay?
And I can tell you why, if you'd like. The way that the study was, okay, well, the way that was, if you don't want to hear it, I won't say it.
All right. I mean, I don't think it's highly relevant here.
Oh, it's absolutely real.
Well, then your attorney can redirect you.
Go ahead.
All right. I have no.
No further questions? Did you say? So is he finished with Russ? Are you
Yes.
finished with Russ?
Yeah.
And you redirect?
At the risk of going where we don't want to go, you were trying to tell opposing counsel why the pension study for the IUPA agreed to change that the city's trying to force on us was inappropriate. What is that?
That study was taken in steps. There were multiple proposals. And each proposal was studied based on the first one being accepted. The very first proposal in that study was to move the cap to $120,000. That's also the highest cost of the study. The city has not agreed to move it. So all the costs after that are including that 120 cap. They're all wrong. It needs to be restudied before the council can vote on it. That's all I wanted to say.
Briefly, opposing counsel was grilling you on I try to paint Wayne as the evil one.
Pretty good at that.
Long story short, that on exhibit number 3, the very first page, the lieutenant wage comparisons, those are the comparators the city picked out, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Did the city ever pick out any other comparators other than these?
No, sir.
Did you believe that these are appropriate comparators?
I did.
Okay. Did we ever offer comparators from outside the county?
We did not.
No further questions.
That's all I have.
Okay. Lieutenant, you can sit down.
Thank you, ma'am.
That is our sole witness.
Okay, so those to be in left.
We're done. Yes, sir.
And now turn it over to the city.
You want to keep on talking or take a break?
Can I take a break? Yeah.
It's a
so-
short one.
Okay,
Just
so
kidding.
let's take our first witness and then
All
we'll.
right. The city calls Jonathan McKinney.
Jonathan McKinney.
And as I mentioned to you in my opening, we're going to be using a PowerPoint presentation for part of this presentation. So it's going to be up on there, and it's also in the city's exhibits. And particular,
And who is Mr. McKinney?
pardon?
No, well, what is your position? I'm sorry. I didn't make myself clear.
Assistant city manager.
City Manager, Director.
Okay, Mr. McKinney, do you want to come up here and make a presentation, or are you
That'd be
comfortable?
easier, if it's okay.
Fine. Remember that numbers don't get translated into my brain as fast as words do, because I'm an English major, so it's slow.
We will do so.
Okay.
I believe he's already been sworn in. Could you state your name for the record, please?
Jonathan McKinney.
And you just said it, but probably not loud enough for the tape to hear. Could you repeat
assistant city manager, finance director.
And how long have you held those two positions?
I've been the finance director for going on 2 years, and the assistant city manager for 1 year and 2 months. So I have 2 roles for the city.
And did you serve as the chief negotiator for the PDA lieutenant part of the unit?
Yes, I did.
How about the other units that I described in my opening statement? Were you the chief negotiator for that as well?
Yes, sir, I was.
And the firefighters unit?
Yes, sir.
And me?
Yes, sir.
So I had you identify a couple of exhibits. Exhibit 1, you've got it in front of you. Can you identify what that exhibit is?
Yes, sir. That's the most current collective bargaining agreement with PBA that was valid through September 30th of 2023.
And does that include various memorandums of understanding that were arrived at during the course of the agreement?
Yes, sir.
And these are included at the end?
Yes, sir.
Now, you mentioned that you negotiated the agreement with IUPA, which consists of what groups of employees?
I would consist of the rank and file with the ranks of police officer and sergeant.
And can you just briefly describe for the special magistrate what it is that you agreed to with IUPA in terms of wages and any of the benefit increases that you may have?
Yes, sir. Collectively, if we take into account all the membership, the first year was the approximate 7.85% increase of everyone, and for year 2 was across the board 5% increase. We also agreed to increase the majority of the incentive specialty pays for the specialty assignments, roughly $5 bi-weekly, with the exception of the CID detective assignment, which was increased to 110, I believe it was. We also agreed to change their FLSA pay cycle, which was, it's a 2-week pay cycle, but from 80 to 84 hours, upon which overtime would be eligible. To go from the 80 to 84, we gave a small incremental increase to compensate for that overtime loss for those 4 hours. We also
just stop you there. So for the rank and file, their overtime threshold actually increased.
Yes, sir.
80 to 84.
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And all of that was in compliance with the 7K exemption. We also, for the detectives, increased their clothing allowance from $750 to $250. We made various changes to their pensions, agreed to make a couple of changes to the pensions. We also made changes to I'd have to get my notes back there, but there were a couple of other, but monetarily wise, there was no real change.
All right. The negotiations with this particular unit, did you arrive at any particular tentative agreements with them, apart from the issues that we're going to pass on?
For PBA?
Yes, for PDA lieutenants.
Yes, sir. We made quite a few tentative agreements as early as May 19th of 2023. There were a couple of them that we came back through the negotiations that we had to revise, and we TA'd those. So by November 13th of last year, we had TA'd all articles with the exception of wages, retirement, and duration.
And in your exhibit notebook in front of you, tab 2, it appears to be a compilation of the tentative agreements that you arrived at with the lieutenants bargaining unit. Is that correct?
What tab, sir?
2.
Yes, sir.
And without going into any detail, were the tentative agreements that you arrived at with the lieutenants, apart from, of course, wages and pension, which are at Impasse, were they consistent with the agreements that you reached with IUPA as it relates to specialty pays and those other things you described?
Yes, sir. We had pretty much had agreed that the to be consistent and uniform between the two bargaining units.
Just backing up for a second, tab 3, can you just tell us, Special Magistrate, what tab 3, that single page, represents?
Yes, sir. My notes
There it is. Your notes.
Thank you. These were all the changes that I took forward to City Council back in October as part of their ratification of the IUPA contract, and the changes that the major changes that I made to all of the articles that might have had an impact monetarily.
Two other articles, I'm going to let you go ahead with what you put together in your PowerPoint. Two other tabs, I should say. One is the city's final proposal on wages, tab 5. Does that represent, in tab 5, the city's final proposal that was given to the lieutenants as pertains to wages?
Yes, sir.
And same question on pension. I'm looking at tab 7. Does that represent the city's final position as it relates to pension that was given to the lieutenant's department?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's flip to tab 4. Sounds like you've got the technology to put this up on the screen. And it's already up there. So I'm going to go ahead and let
Before
you.
go there,
All right.
can we go back to tab 5 and just clue me in on where it says 24.2 TIG, is that time and grade? TIG, and then you have an annual base rate of pay that's under section 24.2 TIG.
That's a scrivener's error. That should have just been blank. In looking at this as it was stated previously, we had also made them on our prior meeting an offer. T&G stands for time and grade, so that just had not been removed from. So that should be stricken. Thank you.
Now we're going to what? What tab?
We're going to tab 4. Much of this is background information for the purposes, just to kind of fill in some of the things that you found in your presentation that we wanted to fill in. So with that, why don't you go ahead and begin your presentation on these slides. I may interrupt you as we go on. And of course, Mr. Ford, question you want to do.
Yes, sir. Within the city of Port Orange, as it was stated, we have 4 collective bargaining units. However, we also have civil service, which when it comes to raises, et cetera, we do follow what was given by NAGE, which is our general employees, which, blue collar, white collar employees. So we do follow that. So for this past year that went into effect October 1st of 2023, we had agreed with NAGE to give a 5% across the board for both fiscal year 10/1/23 and 10/1/24. Conversely, those same exact raises were given to civil service. So knowing that it was a 5% wage increase, that was the basis of where I began the negotiations of this year. So when we settled with IFF, it wound up being through everything between firefighters, driver engineer, and lieutenants. The average was 9.68 for year 1 and 5.3% increase for year 2. That was all based off of surveys that were done of the region, and it was discovered, like we had talked about previously for IUPA in prior year, that our fire department in general was below the average. Then for IUPA, as already stated, the 7.85% and the 5% for year 2. For PBA, our initial offer was 5%. Then after we took into account the PBA stance on $1.95, I was given an authorization to increase their base rate of pay by the $1.95 per hour, and then 5% increase on top of that new base rate, which comes out to 9.72% increase for year one, and this standard 5% increase for year two. It would just be noted that for the fire, the 5.3, it's just because it actually has a compounding issue because it's the time and grade, and that's why it was 5.3 versus the 5.
Let me ask you this, so the increase that you indicated that was offered to the lieutenants was a 9.72%, and that includes 5% plus the $1.95. Is that what you said?
Actually, we gave them, by doing the $1.95 increase per hour first, then the 5%, that actually gave them a greater increase versus doing 5%, then the $1.95.
Okay.
So we gave them the higher of the two, or we offered the higher of the two.
So 9.72% incorporated the $1.95.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So in terms of the tentative agreements that have a monetary increase or effect for Article 18, which is the take-home vehicle article, we wanted to make sure that we complied with Florida state statutes, that there would be no longer a requirement to have a supplemental auto insurance policy held by the employee for the minimus vehicle use. So that's been removed, and again, compliant with state statute. Article 22, we increased their detective clothing allotment by the $250. Article 24, which held their specialty assignment pays, we increased the assignment, we added one additional assignment, and then from a previous MOU, there been another assignment pay, so all that was incorporated into this new contract. And to be consistent with IUPA, we increased all of their assignment pays by $5, and the detective was increased to the 110 per pay period. And as I stated already, all articles have been TA'd as of November 14th of 23, with the exception of wages, retirement, and duration. When previously, when I had done comparisons and I had given a copy of it to PBA, I looked strictly within Volusia County and a couple of other agencies outside of Volusia. Going through this process, when it was explained to me the requirements of Florida statute for Impasse, I did broaden that scope to include all counties that touched Volusia County, which was Brevard, Lake, Seminole, Volusia, and Flagler County. I sent a request to 46 municipalities. I received responses back from 44. 8 of those 44 did not have lieutenants, so I got responses from 36 agencies with lieutenants. So looking at these are, then when I looked at Brevard, Lake, Seminole, and Volusia, the ones that are in an orangish color, I felt that those were the most applicable to Fort Orange.
For what reason?
Size of the department, overall budget, etc.
Numbers of employees in the police department, that have been a factor?
Very similar, yes, sir. And just to kind of give a map, here's the map of the agencies that, the counties that surround Volusia. I did not highlight Flagler simply because there was no municipality, Bunnell and Flagler Beach do not have lieutenants. But then you can see that I starred the cities that are actually, I felt, more closely aligned with Fort Orange. So taking a look at this, again, I did look statewide, previously utilizing FTLE website to, look at, number of, sworn police officers in an agency, population, et cetera. There's no one size fits all, but taking account into a regional approach, Port Orange being the top, the 4 below are the most significant. Also, when I took a look at this, being familiar, quite honestly, with Titusville as I previous employer, parents living in Leesburg, going to Altamont to land a lot, I can say that there seems to be a lot of similarities. There's no beach access, special events, et cetera, that allows for some of the overtime pay related to lieutenants, et cetera. But I did look at also the average salary. When I looked at the average salary, when I made my request, it was for base salaries. So I did receive the information that showed whether they were salary or hourly and what their annualized base was, whether it was a 2080 or 2184.
Okay. And where, I see in the second box here with Port Orange, we have the average salary of 98,940. That's, I'm assuming, the
Proposed. Yes, sir.
Not yet been agreed to by the union.
That's correct, and I see that the asterisk is there, but the verbiage must have been
That's okay.
removed.
Wanted to clarify that for the special magistrate. So where in the spectrum of things with regard to these particular comparators does Port Orange fall?
The list that's shown would show that we are the highest of the 5, and I will also say that when I sent out the request, it was for their wages as of a specific date, meaning this current fiscal year.
All right. You can keep on going.
Okay. So again, taking a look at where we felt the average salaries of the key regional municipalities, you can see that prior to our proposal, that we would have been in the middle of the 5. With the proposal that's been made, it would bring us to the highest of the 5.
All right. We go to the why we do not compare to Daytona, POPD, and Volusia County. Before you go there, you saw in one of the union's exhibits a lieutenant wage comparison page that listed some lieutenants that apparently are employed by Volusia and Daytona. Do you recall seeing, what document?
No, sir, I did not see that.
I'm going to show it to you just so you can. That's the document I'm referring to. Do you recall anything?
Yes, sir, I did. During negotiations, I did provide that.
What were the circumstances under which you provided?
Early on within the negotiations, I stated, and we both agreed that I would do a survey within the area. That is also the agencies that previously City Council has compared us to.
Did you agree with them that those were comparators at that point in time?
At that point in time, based on what we were directed to survey.
You provided that information to them on Volusia Sheriff's Office as well as Daytona.
That is correct.
But you didn't agree with them at the time that those were the only comparators.
That's correct.
That's what I was asking. Okay, go ahead.
So why do we not compare Port Orange? Again, I am not a sworn officer, but if I look at the various things that was available to me, we do not offer a lot of the specialty assignments that Volusia County and the city of Daytona Beach does, as well as we don't have, both of these agencies offer special duty details, which we do not. So I just don't see how we're totally comparable to the other two.
This slide references population, number of sworn officers, number of lieutenants in the budget. It speaks for itself. You don't need to go through it all, but just in general terms, in terms of all those factors, is the city of Port Orange different in those respects as it relates to Volusia County and the city of Dayton Beach?
If I look at all four columns that are presented up there, then we do not compare in any one of the four regards, other than the fact that we do have lieutenants.
What did you consider to be the most relevant comparison? If you did these comparisons, what were you looking at? How many lieutenants were in the department? The population?
I looked at everything, ma'am. I looked at budget, population, number of sworn officers, number of lieutenants, and as previously stated, there's truly, everyone has got their own mix. Every agency does things differently.
If I understand her question correctly, was there one particular thing that you were focusing on, or was it a series of factors?
A series of factors.
Go ahead.
So even if we do compare our starting base pay, if we go with the proposal, if they were to accept the proposal, would have put us right in the middle of Daytona Beach and Volusia County Sheriff's Office in base pay.
Okay. So your base pay.
Yes, sir. So then when I went to the average salaries of the regional agencies surveyed, this is just where things just, are more vastly different, I'll go with a different word, are different. So when we looked at this, it became very clear that, again, prior to Impasse, I had not gone to this level of detail. But once I did, it comes very clearly that our proposal would have put us in the top, out of 36 agencies, we would have been in the top 4 in overall pay, only behind Daytona, Oviedo, and Ferries. Again, all 3 of the agencies that would have been above us have very different, makeup of budget, both city and police budgets, also the demographics that they serve, et cetera, in terms of offerings to the officers are far different than we have.
And just so the record's clear, in terms of all these municipalities, these entities, they include ones that are in Volusia County, our county?
Yes, sir, the one Daytona Beach.
Okay. For example,
That's the only one that's in the same county?
Yes, ma'am. Oviedo is in Seminole, Tavares is in Lake County.
But you've got Volusia County in here, you have City of New Smyrna Beach, which is in Volusia County, correct?
Yes, sir. If you would like, I can start from the bottom and tell you where every city's located.
Why don't we, for the record, go ahead and do that, just indicate what county each of these cities is located in.
Yes, sir. Daytona Beach is Volusia, Oviedo is Seminole, Tavares is Lake, Port Orange is Volusia, Lady Lake is Lake, Leesburg is Lake, Lake Mary is Seminole, Claremont is Lake, Volusia County, Rockledge is in Brevard, Palm Bay, Brevard, New Smyrna Beach, Volusia, Titusville, Brevard, Longwood, Seminole, Ponce Inlet, Volusia, Ormond Beach, Volusia, Daytona Beach Shores, Volusia, Sanford, Seminole, Orange City, Volusia, Winter Springs, Seminole, Cocoa, Brevard, DeLand, Volusia, Cocoa Beach, Brevard, Groveland Lake, West Melbourne, Brevard, Melbourne, Brevard, Mount Dora Lake, South Daytona, Volusia, Mascot, Lake County, Melbourne Beach, Brevard, Fruitland Park Lake, Eustis Lake, Altamont Springs, Seminole, Satellite Beach, Brevard, in the Atlantic, Brevard, Howey in the Hills, Lake.
So, of the entities that you've listed here, they are included in the Volusia, Seminole, Lincoln, Brevard counties. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Central Florida.
Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead. We've got one more slide.
Yes, sir.
Maybe two.
So out of 146 lieutenants, I believe it was, plus or minus, the average salary across the board was $88,672. The city's offer of $98,940 would bring us to the fourth highest paid out of the 36 surrounding agencies surveyed. That is a 13% increase over the average regional agency annualized lieutenant's pay of $88,672.
And just to be clear, going on the slide before that, on the bottom of it, which is the one with all the different entities in Volusia, Seminole, Lake, and Brevard, you also indicate that the average salary of all the lieutenants surveyed is $88,672.
Yes, sir.
Just to be clear, you included both the different variations in hours that they work, the 2080 versus the 2184, and then based on annualized base salary.
Yes, sir. If they gave me hourly rate of $10 and they were hourly at $21.84, I multiplied the 10 times $21.84. If their hourly rate equated to $9 and they only worked $20.80, I multiplied that amount by the $20.80 to come up with that comparison.
Annualized salary.
Annualized salary.
Very good. All right, last slide, and I think we're done.
This was just to show, we went back and looked at the collective bargaining agreements all the way back to the contractual base pay beginning 10/1 of 2019, just to show what their annualized increase was over the last 4 years, to include what the offer on the table was for 10/1/23 of $98,940 and 10/1/24 of $103,887.
And that would represent a 2-year proposal.
Yes, sir.
Fiscal year 23-24 and fiscal year 24-25.
Yes, sir.
Those two columns are proposed, the others are added.
That's correct. The asterisks are to reflect that the amounts are proposed amounts.
Could I have just 1 second? That's all the questions I have.
Am I ready for questions? Let's take a 5-minute break. Did I do that in 5 minutes?
You can't.
John.
Just remind me that you can't talk to anybody.
Can you queue up the retirement? Actually,
Or just leave it up there?
you can leave it here. You can leave it here for now, but the pension will be.
A more comfortable chair, but.
Yeah, right. Great.
Have you ever taken the train from Miami up into Central Florida?
I have not.
You should try it sometime.
You tried it?
I tried it, and I have to say, having grown up north, where Amtrak, if it was 2 hours late, that's a pretty good track record for them. I was pleasantly surprised.
I looked at that as an option, and I decided that by the time I got to the station, I guess it's in Orlando,
Yeah, it's out near the airport.
and rented a car, might as well drive, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we suggested
It
for
was
this.
about a
but-
4-hour drive.
Yeah, in the future, it's, the trains were on time, they were comfortable, they had Wi-Fi, we went by the highways and saw the cars, parked on the roads. So I was pretty, favorably impressed.
Yeah, we have a problem with that in South Florida. They seem to kill people like every month. There seems to be somebody who walked across the railroad, intentionally went to the track. I don't know. It's horrible.
Well, I'm hoping that they build one between Orlando and Tampa, because that's Southern Records, that's going to take us further. You can go ahead, Jim's project.
You got a chance to review all the numbers that the lieutenant here had prepared that we presented. Do you disagree with any of those numbers?
Which number?
Any of the numbers concerning characters or pay?
As it relates to what we presented back and forth on comparative numbers, then no, sir.
Okay. You,
At the level, comparing apples, it's not apples to apples, because some of the comparisons was annualized salary, not base.
okay, so you agree that you should compare apples to apples, right?
As closely as possible.
Okay. Does anybody care what their base salary is? Or do they care about what are they bringing home at the end of it?
I believe that's an unfair question, because some people would like to work a lot of overtime and extra duty, and others just want to do the bare minimum.
Wouldn't you agree the total compensation is what people care
Yes, sir.
about? Okay. You showed a bunch of different comparators from outside the county that we've never seen before. I've got some questions on that. First, what years were those numbers from?
I asked, as of the date that I submitted the email as a public record request to every municipality.
When did you submit that?
Early January.
Okay. Early January of this year,
Yes, sir.
2024?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Looking for their as currents.
Okay. Did they identify for which year the statistics they were giving you? In other words, you can ask me right now how much profit my company made, and I might give you the last fiscal year. Did they specify?
No, I specified what I wanted. I wanted what their current hourly or salary base was, whether it was based on 2080, 2184, et cetera, after 10/1 and 23 for their most current negotiated wages.
Okay, so you asked them, right now, what's the hourly rate you're paying?
That is correct.
Okay. Did you ask them anything else?
Yes, sir.
What?
Retirement, city budgets, median household income, number of sworn officers, vacation, sick, holiday pay. It was about 25 different items.
Okay. Anything else concerning pay besides the hourly rate?
Just asked if they provided any type of incentive base.
Okay. Any other questions reference to salary or pay rate or anything
No,
else?
sir.
Okay. So if you sent a request on, let's say, January 5th, said, hey, what's the hourly rate of compensation for your lieutenants? You wouldn't know if 3 months later they were giving a 10% pay raise to the lieutenants.
That would be true. I did ask for their most
The current.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you never looked at collective bargaining agreements to say, well, do they have a big pay increase coming?
That would be true.
Okay. You saw what the lieutenant here prepared reference VCSO compensation, and he showed for 2022 base salary of $90,000. Would you disagree with that number?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And again, your numbers, in theory, your numbers are just the current hourly rate for people, so you didn't look at any other compensation, did you?
No, sir.
Okay. In the lieutenant's presentation, he prepared to show that while $90,000 is the base salary, when you add in a $4,500 lieutenant stipend, when you add in family coverage that the city of Port Orange doesn't provide to their employees, another $7,600, and when you add in the fact that they pay only 3% towards their pension, whereas the city of Port Orange pays 7.5%, that technically, while the base salary is $90,000 for lieutenants, the actual compensation is $106,759.29. Would you disagree with any of those numbers?
I wouldn't disagree based on the way you presented it.
Okay, so difference between 106 and 90 is $16,000. Is $16,000 a year significant?
Yes, sir. Based on the text that you presented.
Okay. Is there any reason in the comparator that you wouldn't have looked at the other forms of compensation other than the salary or salary rate, hourly rate?
So when you made the statement regarding the site or the health insurance add-on, there is no guarantee of how long the Volusia County Sheriff's Office will be offering that free family coverage.
That's true about every benefit, including pay, isn't it?
That would be correct.
If the city believed there were more appropriate comparators than what you provided, which we've all seen the document, the first page of, I believe it's Union Exhibit 3, why didn't you come back later on and provide those comparators to us if you thought they were appropriate?
I started putting that information after, for today's hearing. I did not do that prior to today. I was trying to follow the requirements of the Florida statute as part of the impasse hearing.
Yep. Mr. Helsby pointed out that in the city's position was that Port Orange and Daytona Beach, even though they're contiguous, even though they're both, in my humble opinion, well-off cities, they're not an appropriate comparator because the population of Daytona Beach is about 12,000 more than Port Orange. Would you agree that because Port Orange is 12,000 fewer people, approximately, that Daytona Beach is not a good comparator?
I believe you're not comparing apples to oranges. Daytona Beach and Port Orange have gross differences.
Let's just talk about population. I want to know if the factor, just the factor of population, is a factor that says, nope, they shouldn't be considered a comparator because Daytona Beach has 12,000 more people than Port Orange.
I'm going to object to that question. It's also speculation. Witnesses already testified that you didn't just single out one factor in making those comparisons. We took into consideration a host of factors. I think it's unfair for him.
Okay. Is that population difference big enough that Daytona Beach should be considered a comparator?
Am I supposed to look into?
Answer it if you can.
I don't believe I can answer that question appropriately.
Why not?
Again, I'm going to object to this. He's already answered the question. He said he took into
I'm going to
consideration.
rephrase the question. What about Daytona Beach do you find to be inappropriate as a comparator? comparison to Port Orange?
They have almost 3 times the sworn officers. Their budget is, almost 4 times greater. Do they have more officers because of crime statistics? Do they have, more officers because of, spring break, speed week, bike week? There's so many things that Daytona has to contend with that Port Orange only gets a very small influence of. I mean, we have basically 2 minor events, family days and, forget the other one off the top of my head right now, versus Daytona Beach might have 2 or 3 major events going on concurrently throughout the year.
As we sit here, how far away from the Daytona 500 track?
I had to make a guess, air miles, 3.
You guys see a big increase in traffic during race week, which is this week, next week?
That's traffic.
You guys have to deal with that, correct?
Yes, sir.
You're familiar with race, the Daytona track, they have their own police?
I was not aware that the Speedway has their own police.
If I put your chief on the stand, do you think he'd testify that you guys have to increase staffing around big events such as Speed Week and Bike Week?
I can't make that, I can't answer that question.
Okay,
Without looking at payroll records.
I'm gonna take you back and say, wouldn't you agree that a city twice the size of Port Orange may not be a proper comparator, just because of the population difference?
That's a reasonable assumption, yes.
And you did hear your attorney say that there was a 12,000 person difference, which is a factor,
Yes, sir.
okay? How many of those comparators from outside of the county have a population 15,000 less than the city of Port Orange?
A few.
How many?
Without looking at the list, I would say,
Everything you
more
don't
than
know.
10.
Speculate, you don't know.
I don't know. Without going back and looking at my backup, without looking at the backup, I can answer that question.
Okay. Did you consider Leesburg a comparator?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In the numbers you gave us, their population is 30,378. Port Orange is 65,008. Leesburg is only half the population size of Port Orange. Why would you consider them a comparator?
I'm gonna object again. I mean, if he's putting words in his mouth, he already testified that he's.
Please answer your question.
In trying to comply with state statute, to look at comparables, I thought it far greater to look at a regional approach, meaning the counties that touch Volusia County, and looking at the various staffing. That was more comparable to me looking at a county in Pinellas, or a municipality in Pinellas or Broward.
Mr. Helsby brought up in a cross-examination that longevity bonus was paid with federal dollars. Is that accurate to the best of your knowledge?
To the best of my knowledge, that took place prior to my coming on board.
Okay. Learned anything since that would indicate that the longevity pay was paid with federal dollars rather
It
than?
was 100% paid by federal funds.
It was paid by federal funds. Why didn't you give it to the lieutenant?
I cannot answer that question.
Would you agree that, as we've already discussed, the W-2s include more than just base salary? They include many other benefits in the bottom line.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would you agree that W-2s are a much better accurate description, not perfect, but a better accurate description of what the total compensation an employee receives from an employer?
No, sir.
Why is that?
Especially when you use 2022, as I stated when it was presented to me back in April, you picked that was a horrible year to show W-2s. We had 2 hurricanes that year, Hurricane Ian and Nicole, which if you're looking at agencies like the Land in Daytona, who are hourly, they have a lot more wages added to their W-2 as a response. Also, I don't know on their 457, health insurance, or a litany of other items that might not have shown on their W-2, because that's pre-tax. So no, sir, I don't feel that that is a fair comparison.
So,
Pre-tax or not, it's still gonna show on their W-2.
Not on the federal side of it.
Yes, sir, it will. It's a total wages income.
I didn't make an objection, I don't think it's gonna get pretty.
one of the things you mentioned was, Article 22, detective clothing allowance went up.
Yes, sir.
And that's part of the compensation that the city has provided the lieutenant.
Yes, sir.
Are there any detective lieutenants?
We agreed to be uniform in terms of all of the items, because they could very well be a lieutenant assigned to the detective bureau effective upon ratification today, tomorrow.
Isn't it true that there are no detective lieutenants and none of them would, if this went into effect, would receive any compensation for clothing allowance
As of
because they all
today.
were uniform?
As of today, you are correct.
You mentioned that Daytona is not a proper comparator because they have special details. Did you say that?
Repeat the question, sir.
You mentioned something about Daytona having special details that the city of Port Orange does.
Yes, sir.
Okay, what is a special detail?
Special detail could be, they're working a concert, a race, a special event, Jeep Beach, truck bash, whatever.
Do they do that for free?
No, sir.
They get paid extra money for working special details.
Yes, sir.
So that's a monetary opportunity that the city of Port Orange doesn't offer their lieutenants, isn't it?
That's correct. Within the city of Port Orange, I can answer whether or not they go and work the details and paid by the other agencies directly.
So, again, because these other agencies have benefits other than base salary, such as working special details, such as the medical, such as lower pension contributions, those are all things that financially make the city of Port Orange less competitive for human beings to work the job, doesn't it?
There's less opportunities for extra work assignments.
Let's talk about why you consider the city of Oviedo the comparator. Please tell me.
Seminole County touches Volusia County, and as stated previously, we looked at the regional approach versus statewide in compliance with state statutes, preparing for today's hearing.
Well, what is it about Oviedo in your mind? You threw numbers up there. And again, let's clarify. You didn't look at anything other than base pay rate, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you didn't look to see if there were bigger specialty assignment pays, correct?
Correct.
You didn't look to see if there was longevity pay that would put more money in their pocket, correct?
That's correct.
You didn't look to see if they covered family medical for their employees, which the city of Port Orange doesn't do.
Correct. Probably could have looked at 100 different variables.
On your exhibit 4, I believe it is, well, I'm going to pull it out. It's this exhibit, it says, I don't have a page. Even if we do compare against Daytona Beach and BCSO.
I got it.
Okay, let's clarify what this chart shows, okay? It's got a scale 70, 80, 90, 100 on the left side. What is that scale represent?
The amount of base pay.
Base pay, not take-home pay,
Correct.
okay? For the city of Daytona Beach, all right, is it right at 100,000, or was the graph cut off there?
My apologies. It was just below 100,000.
Okay. Port Orange proposed, as you say, as you propose it, would be 98,000.
$940.
Okay. Volusia County Sheriff's Department, what's that number supposed to be? Yeah.
Right around 95,000.
All right, 95,000. And that is as of right now, or as of when you made
That is
the
correct.
checks? Okay.
And that's also the average. So where we showed on the, where we showed on the prior slide, that's the average of the 20 sheriff's deputies and the 10 Daytona Beach officers. So it's their average.
Their base rate average?
That's correct.
Okay. Why didn't you look at the W-2s?
Again, that is not a fair comparison.
Is it fair for you to not consider the, I pointed it out, the $16,000 more in benefits that they got back in 2022 at the sheriff's office? It's fair to not even look at that in your chart here?
I'm going to get asked that answer several times.
I recall it was asked before, so I'm going to let him answer again, so this time it's increasing.
Okay.
Again, I do not feel comparing W-2s to W-2s as a true comparison.
Well, let me follow up on that. Is the fact that they get a $4,500 watch commander stipend, is it fair to include that in your chart?
I do not know how their organization operates to warrant them having a watch commander stipend versus our organization.
If I tell you they get $4,500 a year to be a watch commander, just like your Fort Orange lieutenants work as watch commanders, would you have included that in your chart?
I do not know whether or not 20 Volusia County deputies get a watch commander stipend.
I'm asking you if you knew they did, would you have included it?
Then I should have included every incentive pay that they receive on a bi-weekly pay.
So the answer is yes, you would have included it?
Then I would have included it for every last agency that I surveyed. I only looked at base pay. Every agency pays some kind of additional pay per hour, bi-weekly, etc. Every agency.
Would you agree that for pretty much every employee, it's hard to take a pay cut?
No employee likes to get a pay cut.
Okay.
We haven't offered a pay cut.
If several of your sergeants are making more because of overtime than they can make as a lieutenant because they're not allowed to make overtime, wouldn't they take a pay cut to become a lieutenant?
I believe you're asking an unfair question. As Lieutenant Harmon stated, he's vested in the system as a lieutenant, stay within the pension, so maybe his quality of life is different by having a set schedule, being on days, or evenings. I don't know their schedules versus a lieutenant that's, works, on a rotating shift. They work Monday, Tuesday, they're off Wednesday, Thursday. They work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then it rotates around versus some of the lieutenants might work Monday to Friday. So you're asking me to make an assumption of whether or not an individual is willing to take a pay cut going from sergeant to lieutenant, and I would sit there and say, maybe they're in a different stage of life and that's what they want. You're asking me an unfair question.
Would you agree that in general, it's much harder for people making a higher pay to take a pay cut to take a promotion?
Quality of life, sir. You're asking an unfair question. You're asking me to answer a question for future individuals that I do not know their makeup.
Is pay compression good from around?
Never, and I addressed that after the concerns brought by PBA, and I took it back to the city manager who took it to the council, and we got the agreement to give the $1.95 to lieutenants, the same as rank and file.
No further questions.
Just a moment. I'll take you a minute. I don't have any follow-up questions.
I don't know if this is the right witness or not. You said that you've been in the finance manager for the last 2 years?
Yes, ma'am.
And the assistant city manager for about a year and a half?
Yes, ma'am.
Why were there 15 vacancies in the police department?
I'm the wrong person to answer that question.
If you need some testimony on that, I can get the chief to
I wonder if it was
testify.
attrition. All right, so.
I could probably stay and Jerry, having been around, feel free 40 some odd years doing this stuff, but my experience in all law enforcement agencies throughout Florida is they are experiencing high levels of vacancies, just because it's difficult to be a law enforcement officer these days, and you don't have as many applicants. And, different agencies are doing different things to attract them, and that results in some more time. So that's
It's the same thing with the nursing shortages.
yeah, that's probably an accurate assessment of why we get this. But if you want more, I can certainly do so.
Maybe we'll push that issue within this witness and the next witness. So.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Very much.
All right, our next witness is Mr. William here. We're going to try to make this as succinct as we can. Sure.
If you'd like to stay where you are, it's fine. Can you see me?
Well, since it's gonna be up on the screen.
And then if you can take it.
I take it you've had Mr. Lynn testify in front of you before? Because if not, I'll go through his litany of qualifications, but if so, then I won't.
I don't think it's necessary. I'm
Okay.
familiar with Mr. Lynn's background.
All right. Could I
Unless,
just,
of course, you want to talk about yourself, and that's something we rarely get an opportunity to do these days, so
Happy to
Go for
oblige, but,
let me just do this if it's okay with you. I've got a copy of his most recent resume.
All right.
It's 2 pages. I'll just stick that in. Is that all right? Yeah, we can short circuit about that. Okay. So that would be the city's exhibit.
I think it'd be great.
8. And I'll get you a copy for your reading pleasure. I think he's been sworn in, hasn't he?
I don't think you
I don't think I was.
do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, state your name, please.
James Lynn, usually people call me Jim.
All right. How long have you been working with the city on pension issues?
For more than 20 years.
You served as a legal advisor on matters relating to pension for those number of years.
Yep.
Without belaboring any of what's contained in city exhibit 8, you've been involved in legal matters related to pension for probably more than that.
Most of my career, 40 plus years now.
So, without further ado, let's turn to City Exhibit 6. Did you prepare this presentation for the city and the special magistrate proceeding?
Yes, I did.
All right. Why don't we just go ahead and get you started on that? And any interruptions or any questions?
Right, and just before we launch into this, pensions are, there's a lot of numbers involved, and I'm going to try to cut through them as best I can, but most of the numbers that are in my slides came straight from actuarial reports, and I think I'm going to get that most recent actuarial report, which is also a city exhibit. I'm not quite sure which one, but
Let's go ahead and identify it for the special magistrate. So she knows where it's at. I think if that's the police pension plan actuarial valuation of 10/1/22,
yes,
and that's exhibit 6B as in boy.
right. And in preparing these slides, I also went back and looked at prior actuarial valuations. So anyway, all these numbers tie back to the actuarial valuations. And the reason that that's important is that under the state pension laws, which kind of function as a little ERISA for government pension plans in Florida, the actuarial valuations are the reference points.
I had amended 2022, that's what the backup actuarial valuations, that being amended one.
as far as I know, this is the most recent complete.
As long as it's the revised one.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it says revised August 2nd, 2020.
Yes, thank you.
So anyway, that's the source for a lot of these numbers. And so I'm just going to dive in here. A lot of what has been discussed in terms of pension benefits today really goes back to 2011. And in 2011, the city of Port Orange, like many other cities in Florida and across the country, because of the Great Recession, were facing serious financial difficulties. And this plan was certainly in that boat. And there's a few slides later on that go into detail, but the key points here are the city's contributions just basically went through the roof. And the plan between 2002 and 2011 had 10 straight years of actuarial losses. Actuarial losses occur when the assumptions that the actuary uses to value plan benefits are out of whack with what actually happens in reality. So, got a number of assumptions. The big things are investment return, inflation, but it goes all the way down to the expected life expectancy of the members, salary increases, all of those things. There's an assumption for that the actuary presents to the pension board, and the pension board approves as part of this valuation. And so the valuations that are done every year, that's where the city contribution requirements come from. So when you had a situation like we've occurred back in 2008, 2009, 2010, with the markets having some significant losses, the other thing that happens in these defined benefit pension plans is that the unfunded liabilities grow, and that causes the funded percentage of the plan to decline. And so this plan went down to 42.6% funded percentage back in 2006. And what that means is that if you look at the assets of the plan versus the liabilities are really the value of promised benefits. And so if you compare the assets to the liabilities, that ratio is the funded percentage. And so back in 2006, 42.6% funded percentage means that there was 42.6 cents on hand in actual assets for every dollar of promised benefits. And it's not like that necessarily means that, in a lot of other contexts, that would mean that you were bankrupt. But with pension plans, because they're funded out over a 30-year period, the liabilities don't come due immediately. But the funded percentage is one of the factors that actuaries and others look at to try to figure out if the plan is financially sound. And 42.6% is not. So back in 2011, there was some hard negotiations that took place here, and the PBA came to agreement on some reform measures, including, as we talked about, to creating a new tier in the pension plan. So they had Tier 1 employees, which were employees hired before January 2011, and then Tier 2, which was hired after that date. And these tiers, by the way, these are acceptable under the requirements of Chapter 185. That's the law that governs all local police pension plans in the state. You can have benefit differences that are based on date of hire or service, years of service, but you can't, according to the state, you cannot have different benefits based on rank or bargaining. So that's the conundrum that we'll be talking more about. And here, all 5 of the PPA lieutenants bargaining unit members are in Tier 1, hired before 2011. So the good news is, if we fast forward to today, the pension reform worked. The funded percentage of the plan has greatly increased, more than doubled since 2011. City pension contributions have stabilized, and in fact, in the most recent valuation, and that's all very positive for the pension plan. The city has agreed to 3 pension enhancements. They're listed here. One of the big changes, and we'll get into the specifics of this, but one of the big changes made in 2011 was to move away from 20 years of service as an eligibility requirement for retirement, going into the drop, for the COLA, for the health subsidy benefit, and that all got changed to 25 years. The city has agreed, as has been testified to, as part of the negotiations with the rank and file, the sergeants and police officers bargaining unit, to change the normal retirement date back to what's typically called 20 and out. So if you serve 20 years, you can retire with normal benefits. And that change would apply to all members. And the drop eligibility, the drop is when an employee can retire for purposes of the pension plan, but continue working for typically 5 years, now longer in many places. Change that from the 25 years down to 20 years for drop eligibility. And also to change the average final compensation, which is the number in the pension formula that is multiplied by a benefit factor to produce the benefit, to change that to the highest 3-year average. 2 of these 3 things, the first 2 of the 3 things, apply to all plan members. These are the changes that the city has already agreed to. But, as has been discussed, the TVA wants 2 additional benefit enhancements to change the years of service eligibility for the medical stipend from 25 years to 20 years of service, and also to exclude that medical stipend from the $95,000 pension cap, which was another one of the changes that was made in 2011 for everybody, to put in place this $95,000 cap. No actuarial cost study has been done on these changes. And in view of what happened 13 years ago, the city is very cautious about agreeing to benefits that they don't know how much they're going to cost in the short term and the long term. But that's already being studied for coming back to negotiations next year. So this plan is a defined benefit plan. I'm going to move really fast through many of these slides because I think stuff that's already been talked about. But the thing that makes this kind of pension plan different is it's based on a formula, a set formula, average final compensation times years of service times a multiplier. So if you look at this is just an example. It's not anybody's specific benefit, but this is the way it works. So if you have somebody that retires and has average final compensation of $92,720 with 25 years of service and 3% multiplier, which is provided in this plan and a lot of other police pension plans, that's a lifetime benefit of $69,540 a year. And in addition to that, these Tier 1 bargaining unit members are eligible for the $6,000 supplemental benefit, the medical stipend, and also the 3% annual cost of living adjustment beginning at age 59. That's just a snapshot of what the current benefit structure of this pension plan is. Just very quickly, not only is there a state statute, but there's a constitutional provision that says that you have to fund these plans on a sound actuarial basis, and that basically means that you can't shift the cost of current pension benefits to future taxpayers. That's the idea. And the city is ultimately responsible for paying the pension costs, which includes what, the cost of the benefits that are being earned this year, plus paying off the unfunded liabilities that have occurred and built up in the past. The pension board is responsible for administering the plan, and that includes approving the assumptions and investing the pension fund assets. And under the way the law works, the city is the one that ultimately has to pay for any shortfalls resulting from the pension board's decisions. The only thing I'm going to say about the application of the funding law is basically this annual valuation is prepared by the plan actuary, gets approved by the pension board, is submitted to the state, and the city is required to pay the contributions that are specified in that report. And typically these reports are done about a year in advance. So the report for October 1, 2022 is actually showing the city's required contributions for fiscal 23 and fiscal 24. So it gives the city some time to deal with the funding requirements. And this is just a short list of the assumptions that the actuary makes, and that really, to a large extent, guide the results of the actuarial evaluation. And as I said earlier, when actual experience is not as good as the assumptions, that's what leads to actuarial losses. In this case, we've got a couple of inconsistent state laws that we're grappling with. Chapter 447, says that public employers are required to negotiate wages, hours, terms, and conditions of employment with the union representing the bargaining unit, and that typically works out okay everywhere else except for pension benefits, because you got this other state law, Chapter 185, that governs police pension plans, that says that you can't have different benefits based on a member's rank or bargaining unit. And that's why we've had this discussion about, the city really can't, if the city is going to agree to benefit changes, they're going to have to be applied not just to the lieutenant's bargaining unit, but to all of the members of the pension plan, or if it's based on tiers, to all the members in the tier. So for the last fiscal year, this is a snapshot of the member contributions, and I want to point out that there is a differential between Tier 1 and Tier 2 on the member contributions, and that was one of the 2011 changes also. For Tier 1, which is the lieutenant's bargaining unit and about 20 other officers, the percentage contribution is actually 7.5%. And for Tier 2, it's 8%. Because there's so many more Tier 2 members, it's pretty close to 8% overall. And then you have the premium tax that has also been discussed earlier. This is the state tax on basically on automobile insurance policies for cars that are registered here in the city of Port Orange. And the city, by meeting the requirements and standards of Chapter 185, gets a distribution every year of a portion of that premium tax. And then whatever is remaining to meet the overall funding requirement of the plan is the city contribution. And so for last year, the city's contribution was about 43% of payroll, $2.3 million. And if you break that down, apply the 43% of payroll to the 4 active members of the bargaining unit, come up with an average city contribution about $43,000 per active member. And when I say active member, those are the members that are still earning benefits under the pension plan. There's 5 total. One of them is in the drop, so he's not included in this calculation because he's no longer contributing. I mean, you can go into the drop, but you don't contribute anything. For the current fiscal year, the situation, the city's funding requirement has improved. It's gone down 35% of payroll. But even with that improvement, the average city contribution per active bargaining unit member is still $35,000.
And that's for also sergeants and below.
For sergeants and below, the average would be less than that. So I'm just looking at bargaining unit members. Yes. This is really, this is just what makes up the contribution. I spoke of this before, I'll move on. So if you look at the most recent year, the normal cost, that is the cost for the benefits that are being earned this year, was $1.4 million, and the payment to pay down that unfunded liability, that amortization payment, was about $1.1 million. And so you can see that it's still the amortization amortization payment on the unfunded liability is still a significant part of the overall cost of the plan. That's really that column, that amortization column, that's the legacy cost. That's to pay off the liabilities that occurred in past years when there were actuarial losses. And this is just a snapshot of that. So as of September 30, 22, the plan had assets of $54.5 million, had total liabilities of $61.8 million. That the difference between those numbers is the unfunded liability. And these two slides, I guess this is, numbers don't show up very well here, but two slides are 15 and 16. This is really captures the history of the city contributions and the funded percentage for the plan each year, going back in time, going all the way back to 2004 on the next slide. And it also shows the actuarial gains and losses for each year. And so if you look at the most recent 10 years, you see there's still been actuarial losses in 5 of the last 10 years. The actuarial losses is what goes to increase the unfunded liability. If you go back before 2014, you see that there was a whole string of actuarial losses, significant actuarial losses before 2013. That's really what led to the pension reform changes that were made in 2011. So the investments, the pension fund investments, that's probably the most important part of funding a pension plan. The investment return is supposed to pay for most of the cost of the benefits, but when the return falls short, that's when actuarial losses can occur. And even in years of good investments, you can still have actuarial losses. And there's an example there from 2017 where the fund had a positive return of 10%, but had actuarial losses of $750,000. And the reason is that those other assumptions, other than the investment, were not met. And so that's why the actuarial losses are really important factors in the overall funding of the plan. And we actually made a separate exhibit just of these two tables. And that exhibit number is...
That exhibit number is
6C? I think it's 6D.
D's and dogs, yes. Yep. We just extracted 2 slides and put them in that.
Yeah.
James benefit.
So slide 18 is the investment return, and the good news is that over the last few years, the investment return has generally been good, although in 2022 it was a negative almost 15%. But as Lieutenant Carmen testified in 2023, which we don't have the final actuarial valuation yet, it's going to be a positive 15 and change percent. But what you really have to look at, because pension plans, are long-term propositions, you have to look at the long-term totals. And what you see here, and in this chart, there's market return, and that's what the investment guys tell you. Okay, net of costs, this is your market rate return for the year. But what the actuary looks at, it's not market return, it's actuarial return, which is a smooth average over a 5-year period. that's what really, that center column, the actuarial investment return, that's the one that is used in the valuation and determining what the required contributions are going to be. But if you look at the 10-year average of the actuarial return here, and compare it to the assumed rate of return, which has been coming down in recent years. It used to be more than 8% here. Many plans use 8%, and that's no longer the case. But still, the 10-year average has not kept up with that assumed rate of return. And if you look at the longer-term average, which goes back 27 years, you see the actuarial return much, much lower. And you look at these numbers and say, oh, a couple points, how can that really matter? But it really does matter, especially when you're talking about a $60 million pension fund. And what needs to happen, and what I'm sure the pension board is striving for, is to, over a longer term basis, is meeting that assumed rate of return. And that's why the investment advisors and the plan actuaries have been, especially since the Great Recession, have been steadily ratcheting down that assumed rate of return to make it more likely that the plan can achieve it. And that's what everybody is hoping for. So the legal guidelines, changes in pension benefits are mandatory subjects of bargaining. You can't take away benefits that have been earned in the past, but you can reduce future benefits, and even according to the Florida Supreme Court, future benefits of current members. And so that's what happened in 2011 here. The state legislature did it for the Florida retirement system back in 2011. The city is ultimately responsible for paying off the unfunded liabilities, and that's even if everything goes down the drain. And the last legal requirement was one we talked about a fair amount. State law requires that an actuarial study be done before any change in benefits is reached. So we've talked about this. I guess I'm really not going to spend much time on it. The Great Recession had a huge impact on this pension fund, like many others, and that's really what led to the 2011 pension reform effort here. This just shows how the unfunded liability grew, and you see back in 2009, the unfunded liability was $18 million, and now it's $7 million. So there's been a good improvement since then in paying down that unfunded liability, but there's still fairly sizable liability. This shows the city's contributions leading up to 2010. They went up dramatically. So this is what happened in 2011. The city and the union reached agreement on these changes for all members of the police pension plan. So this is where they went, and this is the tier 1, hired on or before January of 2011, requiring 25 years of service to be eligible for the drop, requiring 25 years of service to be eligible for the supplemental benefit, 25 years of service to be eligible for the 3% COLA. And those had been 20 years of service before. Putting this $95,000 maximum cap on pension benefits, and increasing the employee contribution to 7.5% for the Tier 1 members. So these were the Tier 1 changes that were made for the officers hired before that January 31, 2011 date. For the members hired after that date, there were some other changes in addition to those, no drop, no COLA, a normal retirement age of 48 and 10 years of service, but no, 25 years of service and out. Reduction, substantial reduction in the supplemental benefit, the same $95,000 cap, and a little bit higher employee contributions. These are the Tier 2 changes that were made. But going back to what the discussion has been, the focus here is really on Tier 1 because all of these bargaining unit members are Tier 1. So what happened as a result of these changes, the actuary, what he has to do is take these the plan changes into account and then project them out over the expected lifetime of the plan members. And that resulted in a immediate $2 million reduction in the unfunded liability, and a $500,000 a year reduction in the city's pension contribution, and as we talked about before, an increase in the funded ratio, funded percentage is consistently increased. And the bottom line here is that there's no question this plan has become much more financially stable and sound since those 2011 changes were put into effect. So the PBA proposal is to amend the plan immediately to provide, to go back to the 20 years of
I'm going to object. That completely mischaracterizes what the PBA proposal is. That's what the city is asking for.
No, that is incorrect. The city has not offered the change in the years of service supplemental benefit from 25 to 20.
He has the right to
Absolutely refused.
Okay, all right, let's continue. You can question him on that.
But it's presented in this fact, right?
Mr. Forney is excellent attorney, we can identify.
So these are the 3 points, as I understood them, of the PBA proposal. The excluding the supplemental benefit, the medical stipend from the benefit cap, effectively increases the cap. And then to go ahead and study the cost of changing the years of service eligibility for COLA to 20 years of service. So, problem is, that there's not been an actuarial cost study of these two changes. And state law requires that.
And we had that discussion before. So I just want to hop in with a question right here so I have an understanding, so this is to clarify. If the recommendation were to accept the union's proposal, that would require the pension plan to implement that for the PBA as well as, Ayuba?
Well, it would require that it be implemented, that the 25 to 20 years of service for the supplemental benefit, that would have to be done at least for the Tier 1 members of the other bargaining unit.
Okay.
The tiers would have to be treated the same.
Gotcha. All right. Glad I asked the question.
The $95,000, excluding the supplemental benefit from the $95,000 cap, since both tiers have the $95,000 cap, I'm not sure whether that would mean that it would have to be applied to both tiers? I'm not sure about that, but at the very least, it would have to apply to all tiers.
All tiers of both units.
All tiers of both units, right. So the city's proposal, talked about this before, was to make these three changes in year one of the two-year contract. To change average final compensation from high 5 to high 3. And since tier 1 already has the high 3 average, this really doesn't affect tier 1. So it would bring all the tier 2 folks up to the tier 1 final average compensation. Also, it would change the normal retirement age to 48 and 10 or 20 and out. That change would affect tier 1 as well as tier 2. And to change the drop eligibility consistent with that to 20 years of service. That change would also apply to tier 1 and tier 2. And actuarial study has already been done on these, and we can sure we'll have more discussion about that. But there is a study that has been done, and it's part of the city's exhibits. I believe it's in 6C. It's the August 2023 study. Yep. And the city proposal in year 2 is to study these three additional changes, which is to provide a COLA for the tier 2 members who don't have a COLA now. Change the years of service eligibility for the COLA from 25 to 20 years of service. And that would apply to tier 1. And actually, it would apply to both tiers, tier 1 and tier 2. So my slide is not entirely accurate there. And then changing the years of service eligibility to 25 years for the medical stipend. And once the study, which my understanding is the study has already been commissioned, not yet completed, the city agrees to reopen the pension article after the actuarial studies. The city's proposal is more reasonable, mainly because it contains three changes for which a study has already been done. It also would provide for an actuarial study of the three other pension benefit enhancements before they're negotiated. And this city proposal has already been agreed to by the meeting room and the officers and sergeants. So, finishing up here, there's several slides on comparisons. It's kind of hard to compare every aspect of the pension plan, and a lot of these plans, these local law pension plans are different, and they have many different variations, but I've tried to isolate the main things that we're concerned with here. The multiplier, basically for police, pretty much everybody has a 3% multiplier. I think there's one outlier here, Titusville, has less than 3%. Normal retirement is, again, the 25 years of service is pretty much what most cities in the area have, with Daytona Beach being the exception here. Cost of living adjustment, there's a little more variation, but 3% is somewhat common. This compares FRS, which is the county, Volusia County, which we talked about a lot there, FRS. There's a number of smaller cities that are in FRS. And one of the changes the state legislature made in 2011 for FRS was to have basically say no cost of living adjustment for service after 2011. And even this year, state legislature is looking at restoring that, but that's a $2 billion budget item for the Florida retirement system. But in a lot of ways, I mean, the takeaway from these three comparison slides is that, yeah, there's a little bit of variation, but for the most part, Port Orange is certainly in the same ballpark with most of these other cities. And the one thing that Port Orange has right now for the Tier 1 members is this medical stipend, which can be as much as $7,200 a year with 25 years of service. And that is better than almost everybody else. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation and embrace.
And I don't have any further questions from Mr. Lynn. I think you covered everything we wanted to cover.
All right, we're going to take a short break. Let's try to make it more than 10 minutes.
Wow, we'll do.
5 minutes will do it.
There you are, Blanche, but you can.
All right. Just stay right here.
I have to say that this magistrate reminds me of the very first current seminar that I ever went to, where they were 40 minutes and the rest of the room was 50. I don't know if you remember that far. Yeah, probably about 19 years. Right. Never a problem getting the ladies.
Was that over in Amelia?
They were at various places.
Yeah. I just remember one in Amelia Island. Pat Renovich was still there. Yeah. That's when I really started finding out how people think about my former partner.
I had one where I think maybe I really think maybe I never called him. In fact, I think Pat Renovich from up there.
Yeah. Those were the days.
Those were the days, yeah. I knew one.
Is that your vote?
Oh, no, it's not me. No, I'm a camper. This is my truck camper. If you believe that, I'll tell you no.
I've actually seen campers being towed by sunlight.
Especially if you go to Disney.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That would be a huge-
I do have a fifth wheel, but, and I don't have a truck like that.
Go with the dually.
I did, but I don't have the other size, I just go like that.
Okay.
So, still the one ton, but I don't believe so. By token, it's got about 7,000. Little bit of stability, but
How long?
it's 42 foot. It's going to be I like the downside, but I need such a travel, because I like the downside.
One of my biking buddies, recently, he had a
Are we prepared to get back on the record?
6-foot, 50, and now he just got a Class A, but it's not a long Class A. You know, real heavy duty.
Mr. Alford, it's very nice.
You snuck back in.
What's that?
Never get these back.
Is anyone else freezing?
It's a little nippy, yeah.
It's a little nippy. Is there a way to address it?
Yes. When I got here this morning, the heater was on.
Oh, wow. Now I think somebody will. Ready? James, you ready?
All right, I gotta clarify something here. Your presentation, the second half of page 3, the page that begins the good news, and the first half of page 4, in the middle of page 3, in bold letters, it says, "The city has agreed to 3 immediate pension enhancement for which an actuarial cost study has already been done." You give those 3 points there, and the next page, "But the PBA wants 2 additional immediate pension enhancements." Let's be clear. The PBA never asked for those first 3, the city did, correct?
Well, yeah.
Okay, so when you said the city has agreed to those, that's the city's ask from the union. That's not something that you agreed to give us. That's your ask here that you're trying to impose an impasse.
Okay.
Is there anything incorrect about what I just said?
Well, I mean, the city has agreed to these with the other bargaining unit.
To the rank and file bargaining unit.
And as part of the city's proposal here.
Okay. But as far as this impasse hearing goes, the city is trying to impose it. There's no agreement between the parties.
Well, I guess if ultimately there's no agreement, that's correct.
There is no agreement, is there not?
Not so far.
The 3 things the city is requesting that are on the bottom of page 3, okay? That's the city's ask, and the 2 things on the top of page 4, that's the union's ask, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What is the total cost to the city, ballpark? I don't even need a close figure for what the city is requesting in number 3. Those 3 things at the bottom of page 3.
Well, I would refer to the study. Yeah.
What do you need?
So I'm referring to the study, which is 6C, Exhibit 6C. And if you look at, so basically the 3 changes are in items 4 and 6 of this study.
And what tab are you looking at?
I'm sorry, 6C. And so I think the easiest way to look at this is to go back to Exhibit B to the study. And look at what the actuary has here as proposed. So the study is 6C, but it's this August 23rd, 2023 study.
Right.
And then this chart is Exhibit B to the study.
I just want a WAG
Yeah.
estimate of
So,
what the changes
Okay.
that the city is requesting would cost.
oh, I thought you were asking for the changes. Oh, okay.
Changes that I characterize as already agreed.
Yeah. So,
Can I clarify, let me just interrupt one. Are all the exhibits in the city's exhibit book agreed to by the union?
We haven't had a chance to review them page by page. So I will say, obviously, I was handed it today. There's no way I can read that many pages. I will say tentatively, yes. I will say that Mr. Helsby has never pulled a quick one on me in the past. But I can't say absolutely because until I get a chance.
Let me change how I phrase the question. I'm not saying that you agree with the content, but the admissibility of the.
Absolutely.
Fine, that's what I want. I appreciate it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And the same on his exhibits. I agree with the admissibility, the question of relevancy and all that.
Correct. Yeah. So, I
Okay.
what you were saying.
so the changes are to go to 20 years of service for normal retirement age. And as I read the study, that is item 6 in the study. And the other is the drop eligibility, which would be part of, it would be part of that item 6. Because from the actuary's viewpoint, drop eligibility, making that the same as normal retirement is basically the same thing in the hospital. And then the third item is changing the average final compensation from high 5 to high 3. And that is item 5. So we're looking at items 5 and 6. And if you look at this Exhibit B, the reason I think this is the best way to look at it is change present value of benefits. That is what the actuary calculates as, okay, if we make these changes and they're paid out over the lifetimes of the plan members, this is the resulting change in the value of the current plan benefits reduced back to present value. So this is the amount of money that would have to be put into the pension fund to completely pay for these changes now. That's the cumulative change in present value of benefits. So the problem, which Lieutenant Carmen spoke about earlier, is that if you look at the way that the actuary has done this study, he's built in to all of proposal 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 5, and 6. Proposal number 1, which is the increasing the cap to $120,000, which it's not part of anybody's proposals at this point.
I'm going to try to shortcut this for you.
You just want me to tell you the number?
All I want is, yeah, a
Okay.
ballpark,
Okay.
just give me the number, I don't
So
know.
it looks like if you back out the proposal one amount from 5 and 6, you get 1.366 million additional cost for proposal 5 and a 1.327 million additional cost for proposal 6. So if you added those together, which the actuary will tell you really can't do, but I'm going to do it, you get about $2.7 million increase in the cost of the benefits.
Okay, for the three things the city is asking for at the impasse here.
Correct.
Okay, fair to say that that's significantly more, even though we haven't done a study, than what the two changes the union is asking for in the pension.
It depends on how these are going to be applied. But if the, I grant you, if you're only talking about the lieutenant's bargaining unit, sure. But I don't think
If we're talking about tier 1 employees, which are basically anybody hired before that date, 2011, we're talking about a significantly smaller number of employees than the tier 1, which all that stuff the city's asking for applies, correct? Or tier 2, guys, that applies. So, would I be incorrect to say that the union's ask is going to have a much lower cost on the city than the city's ask as far as the cost to the pension?
I think it would be less, but I'm not an actuary, but I think it would be less. I can't say much less, but I think it would be less.
So the union's ask it would cost less probably than the city's ask.
That's what I would think.
Okay, Florida statute 112.63 subsection 3, the one you cited up there.
Yeah.
There would be nothing wrong with if this magistrate says, yeah, give the union what they're asking for, the city could have the study done and then enact the ordinance, could they not?
The city could have the study done and then enact the ordinance. That is correct.
Thank you, no further questions.
That's all we have. Go ahead.
Anything further from the union?
Let me, no, I don't think so, but I just want to be clear that in terms of the exhibits, that they are admitted into evidence, meaning that they don't need authentication. And understanding that we may have issues with the relevancy. I just want to be sure that's clear. And if that's the case, then the city rests.
Wayne, can you repeat again what you're asking for as far as the exhibits?
Yeah, I just want to be sure that they, I know this is an informal process and we're not in a court of law, so, but I want to be sure that they are admitted into evidence with the understanding that we don't have to prove the authentication and all that.
Right.
But subject to arguments in our briefs
Right.
about relevancy
And both sides understand that we could dispute the actual numbers.
Sure, yeah.
So now that the word briefs has been mentioned, I assume that both sides want to do a closing brief rather than a closing argument.
I already did my closing. Just that's what you're holding, yeah. So I was in the, anyway, yes, we would like to follow.
Okay, do you want to put parameters on what those briefs are going to look like? How many pages? When they're due, remember I have to issue a decision within, I think it's 15 days, I'm not sure, 10, 15 minutes.
My preference would be for oral closing arguments, because I'll be honest with you, I have another larger impasse hearing scheduled for the 27th. So honestly, I wouldn't have the time to put in, before then to do a waiver brief.
Just, can we talk for a second?
Yeah, but I just looked at the lots.
Yeah, let's do it. So if it's okay with you, we're willing to, we both would like to file briefs, but 15-day requirement's a bit strict for us, so, and for you. So we're willing to waive that, and go ahead and have our briefs filed by the end of March. If that's okay with you.
I think the commission is involved in this, they're a party to this proceeding.
I don't hear them objecting.
If that's the case, we could maybe petition.
Within 15 days after the close of the final hearing, the special magistrate shall submit his or her recommended decision to the commission and to the representatives of the parties by registered mail.
My experience is that's been something that we could, as the parties waive, but, you know, if you're reading it differently, then.
And again, it's the intent to protect the parties so they get a quick resolution, but if the parties are good with an extension.
Okay, I'll go with them. I'll go
And is
with
the hearing
one.
left open pending the brief and closing, unless you're closing argument?
Yeah.
That's another.
That's true, that's a good point.
Is the hearing left open pending the closing argument? I mean, that is your closing argument in the brief.
Hearing doesn't close until you do the briefs. Then you got 15 days.
It reminds me of an arbitration hearing I've had a couple times.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay, so, we will then, I will not close the hearing today, we will wait for the, submission of briefs, and you want to do it by what date?
Very nice.
Into March.
March. I will be preparing an appellate brief and everything sorted for that. But I think I can do it, okay. So pick a date.
March 29th, which, hey, it's leap year, right? In February.
Yes, it is.
Good. So that's like one more thing. March 29th, okay, we can close the business. That's a Friday.
Can you and I talk, can we talk one more moment?
Pardon us. Sorry.
We're in agreement that, March 15th, the eyes would be a perfect date for us to submit our brief.
All right.
Does that work for you? Close the business that day?
Yeah, that works for me, absolutely. So,
Email, okay, to just email them to you and then.
yes, and then serve each other, absolutely. And then my response, my order will be So, if that's the case, then I am going to adjourn the hearing for today. I'm going to finish the hearing, we're just adjourning today. And I will look forward to receiving your closing briefs on 3/15, and the decision will be issued by, I think it's April 1. So, anything further we have to take up for today? Thank you all. I appreciate so much your cooperation.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, now, what happens with the date?
I'm gonna hand it over to the city. The city will use their tech people, and with everyone's consent, can I go ahead and turn this off now?
Yes.
The city will be able to email